Hello, everybody, and welcome to Faeria Showdown number 1. As you all know, I'm Crow, and I'm joined here by Jokes. Jokes, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. I'm a little bit tired from the late tournament last night, but I'm very excited for this match.
All right, that's great to hear. Uh, Jokes, let's get started with just about the tournament. How did you come up with the idea for this showdown? I know you came to me about it that a lot of people might not be too aware of, but could you tell me what went into the tournament, what planning you did before you came to me with it?
Well, basically, I've been wanting to do something like this for a long time. The idea really came from Dan. He said it would be really cool to have like show matches in the future, and since then, I've been like thinking about it and how to do it in a good way. And I think inviting the top players of the God rank is a good way. In the future, maybe we can have like special invites or grudge matches. You know, when there's like people who. I mean, we don't see so much of that yet, but hopefully at some point we're gonna have like bigger rivals. People always trying to compete for us and thing.
Yeah, just people that are really going after each other's throats and really want to put on a good
Yeah,
match. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea, and maybe even someday like top streamers and that sort of thing, so we can get a cappuccino and whoever else makes it big on the scene.
absolutely. Yeah, I think that's just great. There's so many ways you can do this, and you can also have like polls, having the viewers uh, vote for who they want to see play against who.
That sounds like a great idea, and that's all things that we have to think about in the future. So anyway, on this event here, we chose the Relentless format for this tournament, and a lot of people don't know what Relentless is, and that's okay. It's a pretty new format that Joke and I just created. The idea is that we wanted to push deck building to a new level. We didn't just want people using the same deck over and over for a best of 7 show match. We didn't want people using stock lists, so we decided to restrict it as much as we possibly could. So we created the Relentless format, and what they have to do, the players have to make 4 decks, and across those 4 decks, they can use no card more than 3 times, no more than 3 copies of any card, or 1 copy from any legend. Joke, how do you think that'll affect deck building? What sort of decks do you think we expect to see?
Well, I have cheated a little bit and already taken a look at the deck lists, but at at some point I was a little bit worried that we would see a lot of mono decks, but I'm happy to say that that's not the case. And I think both players have managed to make decks that seem really strong and competitive. And if I was going to compete in a tournament, I would love this format because it requires so much like planning and testing, and there's so many different things you can do. It's not just see what's popular right now, try to either copy it or try to make something that's strong against it. So I think I'm really excited about this deck, this format.
Okay. And now, Joke, you've been in this community a lot longer than I have. I'm pretty new to it. What do you know about the players that we're seeing today?
Um, so we're gonna have KingDanzz against Hithlum, and about KingDanzz, I don't know him very much, and I have also not played against him too much. I know he's a player from Germany, and he has played Hearthstone. He has been uh, God rank 1 several times, and his best finish, except for now, was I think rank 3 in Hearthstone.
Wow.
Not completely sure about that. He doesn't have any other card game experience, as far as I know.
Wow, that's really impressive to be able to see a player coming in from pretty much no experience and learn a game this thoroughly to be able to dominate the ladder like he is here.
Yeah, he's putting like he's really showing how it's done. He's very successful so far in Faeria. And Hithlum, his name is Nikolai. He was born in Latvia. He's 29 years old. He has a ton of experience with card games. He told me he played Magic since he was 13 until he was 20, so that's 7 years. And he has been Magic the Gathering champion 2005, 2007, and he has been playing a bit of poker, Netrunner. Um, he was a Scottish Netrunner champion 2013, 2014, and he's been playing some Hearthstone as well. But he says ever since he picked up Feria, he doesn't have he doesn't want to play anything else because it's just so much fun. And he lives in United Kingdom.
Okay. So it seems like we have pretty much the two opposite ends of the spectrum here. We have this player with almost no card game experience, just a little bit of Hearthstone and whatnot, versus this player that sounds like he's been playing card games his whole life.
Yeah, and KingDanzz, the player with no experience, is the one who has the #1 spot right now.
Wow, so this should be a great matchup here. So I think we're ready to go
Yeah,
ahead and take a
definitely.
look at the deck list then. Which deck list do you want to start with? Do you want to start with KingDanzz or Hithlum?
Well, I already decided of a favorite, but just to make it exciting, I'm gonna ask you, which deck do you think looks the most fun, or which deck are you most excited to see so far? I know which one I like the most, at least.
Okay, let's go ahead and show Hithlum's list first. It's the sort of deck that I've been playing on the ladder actually. So I know a little bit more about this than a lot of decks in the format right now. So here we can see Hithlum's Feed the Forest deck. It's a mono green deck, and the idea is that you use Feed the Forest and Oaklings to really get a big advantage and kind of push the boundaries and just push your opponent out of the game. What do you think about this deck, Jokes?
Um, I think it looks solid. It looks very solid. I hate to play against these things because for some reason I always get caught by Magda and then Feed the Forest and then I lose. Oakling is such a powerhouse in this deck. For those, maybe you can explain the card for those who don't know it. Maybe we have some new people tuning in to check
Sorry,
this out.
did you say Magda or Feed the Forest? Or Oakling?
I said Oakling.
Okay, sorry about that. So Oakling is a 1/5 for 4 Faeria, and that those stats make it sound pretty bad. But when it dies, what it does is it actually gives a +5/+5 buff to one of the cards in your hand, one of the creature cards. So it by itself, it doesn't really do much, but when you're able to get it off the board, it makes something in your hand extremely powerful.
Yeah, so this is definitely a very important card for this type of deck. And I'm also very excited that we're seeing triple Vine Walls. Vine Wall is a card that I have very strong positive feelings towards, but a lot of players don't seem to share that. So I'm happy that he decided to include them.
Well, it seems that Hithlum is gonna keep that dream alive for you.
Yeah.
All right, so from there we move on to KingDanz's deck, and from what I was hearing, it sounds like this is the one that you're more excited about.
No, I actually cheated and already took a look at a lot of the.
Oh, I see.
I
So,
mean,
okay.
we're not even gonna go through that deck yet.
Okay, that's fine. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about this red deck here?
So let's see. Um, this is hmm, this looks to me like it could be either. It has a good chance in taking the longer games, but the inclusion of Steamforged Enforcers, and um, I think he might want to just be aggressive with this if he finds the right starting hand. What do you think?
I think he is looking to get aggressive with this deck. I think Cappuccino is one that started really pushing this list a lot on the ladder, or at least a list very similar to this one. And he just tries to play it as aggressively as possible. You just drop 6 drop after 6 drop after 6 drop, and it's really hard for a lot of decks to keep up. Um,
Yeah,
so I think that's what
the,
we expect to see here.
yeah, the Gut Gorger also is making it pretty obvious that it's an aggressive deck since it becomes a 7/7 if you manage to damage your opponent enough.
Hmm.
I haven't had so much time, unfortunately, lately to follow Cappuccino streams or anyone's streams for that matter. So I'm not really familiar with this and I haven't played against it myself.
Okay.
But it looks really interesting.
Yeah, it's remarkable how much power it can put out on the board. So what do you think about the matchup between these two? I know you said you didn't have too much experience, so I'm interested to hear what you think about how this matchup is going to go.
I think a lot of it comes down to really um, what the players draw for their starting hands. Uh, but it feels certainly that the KingDanzz deck is going to be way faster because the Feed of Forest combination deck, it's like it requires a little bit more time to set up. But if you're lucky, of course, you can get some really big things down really early. And we see a lot of big creatures in this Feed the Forest deck. We got 3 Therian Golems, we got 3 Veruden Forces, 3 Grove Guardians, and those will be a bit tough to deal with for a red player here.
Absolutely. That's one reason I like playing this Feed the Forest list against the red list. Because it does have these big threats that just kind of outclass it a little bit. If you're playing a Verduran Force, and your opponent's playing a 6/6, then you're trading very positively there. And the Oakling will be able to push any creature to be able to trade with any of those red creatures. So I think in the long run, if the game does go long, the green deck will outvalue just a little bit.
I agree with you, but he needs to get there also. And we see ground shakers. We get 3 ground shakers, and they can also like turn the bells kind of quickly. But against this green list, I don't think it's going to be too impactful.
All right, well, let's see if we're right. I think our players are ready. So we're here and we're ready to get started with this round 1 match. Good luck to both the contestants, and we'll see how it goes.
All right, this is so exciting.
Oh, I'm amazingly excited. We're going to spectate KingDanzz here just to showcase this red list here. I know Feed the Force has been around a little bit longer, so I'm really interested to see how this red list plays out. And here we go. Oh my.
All right, so we see a Steam Forge in his starting hand, and he must be very happy about that.
I think this is exactly the hand you're looking for, really. You'd like a bargainer or something like that, but just being able to drop these 6-drops is really what he's hoping for to overpower his opponent.
Yeah, and we already know that Hithlum is not running any punishment, so it's going to be really difficult to deal with the Steam Forge Enforcer here.
Absolutely. It's very possible that this Steam Forge Enforcer will just take over the game. Now, Hithlum is going to be cued into the fact that he's getting a little bit rushed here, probably by the fact that KingDanzz started with double Prairie here.
Yes, absolutely, and that will certainly affect how he chooses now to play his lands. Oh,
okay. Wow. Okay, so
wow.
he's choosing to play defensively, and what this does is it actually forces KingDanzz to play one extra land to be able to get to his opponent. It'll slow him down just a little bit, but I don't think he'll be too upset by that. What do you think?
No, I think KingDanzz at this point he's just happy about all the cards he's drawing. This is looking really good right already for KingDanzz.
Mm-hmm.
And this way, Hithlum still doesn't know what he's up against really.
Right.
It could be yellow coming up. It could be green, blue. I mean, there are so many different types of rush decks. And in this format, the relentless format, we probably um, expect some like more weird decks than you're used to seeing.
Mm-hmm.
So
this could even be a mono neutral rush for as much as Hithlum knows.
yeah, so he doesn't really know anything. KingDanzz hasn't been forced to show anything yet.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think Hitler is going to do here? Puts down an Oakling.
Okay, so this is
Now
actually this is going to be how this green deck is going to come back, I think. This Oakling will block off the damage for 1 turn, and that means that he'll be able to get a buff on a creature in his hand. And looking at the amount of Faeria he has, it's very likely that he'll be able to play it and start contesting this board.
Yes, and I was very worried for Hithlum there, but the fact that he had the Oakling in start is very important. What's really what would be really good now is if he has a big taunt creature that he can procs on.
Absolutely. If I think Living Willow is one of the best things to hit, but I don't think I saw those in Hithlum's list, did I?
I can double check. No, he does have the Grove Guardians, Deepwood Grizzlies.
Okay.
Deepwood Grizzly obviously doesn't have taunt, but it's still, I think, a very strong target against his deck.
Absolutely. 3 creatures would have to trade into it to kill it if it got that buff.
Yeah.
We get to see it. Okay, it's just another Oakling. So for some reason he's holding on to that creature in his hand. Oh no. Okay, so it's going to be Feed the
Alright, he
Forest.
wants to get a very big...
So it's going to be a Bloom Sprite here. This is the biggest Bloom Sprite that you will ever see in your entire life, I'm guessing. Wow, so this Bloom Sprite is probably going to trade off for 2 creatures here at the very least. That's absolutely crazy.
This is good positioning here from KingDanzz, because this means um Hithlum is not going to be able to step in front of the second Steam Forge Enforcer. The only thing he can do really is to put up another taunt, or he's going to take 6 more damage to his face
Right.
next turn.
One big thing about this red
But
deck is it doesn't have too much reach. Like once you're out of range, then you get a little bit of defense up. It doesn't have too much of a way to deal with that. So if Hithlum can hold
yeah,
off this initial onslaught, he'll still be fine. And this Vine Wall will
and
help in doing just that.
oh, see, vine walls are awesome. So this is very, very good for Hithlum right now. I mean, we don't know what cards he has in his hand, and he has no economy, but he's starting to get a good board. And we can see that KingDanzz is not going to be able to play anything unless he chooses to move back. No, he can't, because there's a vine wall standing in this
Because
way.
of that taunt right there. Wow. Okay, so it looks like this might be all that Hithlum needed to start taking over this game. I think he's actually in an advantage at this point.
Yeah, with the KingDanzz hand, he's going to be able to play a card every second turn, and that's going to be too slow, I think. Hithlum is going to be able to establish. And he's also running 3 Breath of Life, so these super aggressive decks, if he just can draw into those, he has a lot of heal. So there we already see the first one.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that fourth force coming out means he can start gaining back some life. And if he has any buffs whatsoever, this Grizzly is going to trade positively into the 6/4 too.
Yeah, he's running only one Tiki Caretaker, but he did play the Bloom Sprite, which might have given him something that he can use as well.
Okay, so he does trade off the Bloom Sprite here. We'll see if he what discarded card he ends up getting.
I'm thinking Therian Golem coming down.
It seems pretty likely
And
with that fifth forest play.
yeah,
Wow,
no,
but
it doesn't play
nothing.
anything.
Ooh, that could actually be really bad for Hithlum. If he doesn't have any creatures to play, then KingDanzz is just going to be able to eventually trade into this Grizzly and start taking over again.
Yeah, it could be that Hithlum just sits on a lot of field forests or other cards that he can't really use right now.
Yep, that is certainly the risk with this deck. Maybe he got a Tarim off of his Bloom Sprite and he runs that down here. Oh my god, I called it. Oh wow, so this is probably the first and only time we have ever seen Tarim in a competitive match here. And it looks like it's actually going to be absolutely insane. It's going to hold
Yeah,
down this
this is
6/6. Oh my god.
oh wow, this
Oh.
is amazing.
So once again, Tarim, for those of you that don't know, Tarim is a huge creature, a 7/15 with taunt, and when it dies, it's actually going to take up every available slot on the board and turn it into a forest. It's just going to give Hithlum a huge amount of map control. Wow. How does KingDanzz even
Yeah,
begin to
this
deal with
is
this?
yeah. I mean, as a mono red deck, there is not much. He's just gonna have to trade a lot of creatures into this Tarum. If he
Yeah.
didn't have taunt, he could just ignore it, but here he has to attack it.
And it looks like he's going to try to play the slower game, try to gather some Faeria so he can build up some kind of force for a comeback here.
Yeah, and that is, I think, the last thing he wants to do with his deck. He's in a lot of trouble right now.
Absolutely. I that one of the biggest problems with Tarim is the huge cost that you have to play. Normally it's a 15 cost card that costs 5 force, so it takes forever to get down. But being able to play it this early in the game just seems absolutely devastating.
Yeah.
Turn 5 Tarim.
And we can see in KingDanz's deck also that there's really only um, 3 cards that can deal with the Magda play. And that's the Freedom Fighters, unless he has enough to double Ground Shaker.
Did he not have the Cypher's
Oh,
Wrath? Oh wow. So he is going to
right.
drop
Yeah,
this
he has
right
Cypher
now.
Ref. That's true.
Oh wow. So here's this forest that we were talking about. The world is now filled with forests. And this is going to limit KingDanz's ability to build lands at all. I'm a little bit surprised that he chose to do that before taking out the 6/6 though, so I'm sure he has something in mind though.
Yeah, he probably has a lot of Faeria, or a lot of cards that he wants to put down.
Okay.
Oh, a Ruin Shrine that's really out of reach.
And it looks like he might just be trying to race here then. Not worrying about the 6/6 at all, letting the... Oh no, okay, so he is going to race a bit. Um, but this Rune and Shrine will mean that this Grove Guardian will trade evenly for this 6/6.
Yeah.
I still think I probably would have traded in with Tarum first, but he was probably just so excited to get 15 Faeria off of it.
Yeah, I think I would have, but we can't really say that because we don't know what he has in his hand.
Absolutely.
But I think taking out that 6/6 or 6/5, no 6/6 would have been very, very useful. Because right now it looks like KingDanzz all of a sudden might actually have a shot. But on the other hand, Hithlum sits with 11 Faeria.
Yeah, 11 Faeria is definitely a lot to do. You can run out any card in this deck with that, unless you get another Tarum off of a Bloom Sprite or something. But he's just going to start playing out these Freedom Fighters here. Okay. So he's going to be able to clear the board this way, and still have 6 Faeria left over. Ooh.
And there comes a big threat in his opponent's face.
That Veteran Force is going to be very hard to deal with, just like the Tarum was. Anything with a big body like that is a massive threat for this deck.
Yeah, he does have the Devouring Plant to buy himself one more turn, but by playing that, I mean, so many cards in his deck is so expensive already.
And with this Guardian coming down, it looks like it won't even buy him that turn. He'll be able to take out the Golem, and
Yeah,
it'll just be the same clock that it was before.
yeah. Wow, the Tarun plays, that was really cool.
That's absolutely crazy. I never expected Tarum to swing a game like that, but that's exactly what he was looking for. He has 22 forests on the field now, and if he wants, he can make it 23rd, but I doubt we'll actually see that.
Yeah, I think KingDanzz is realizing that this is pretty much over because right now he cannot deal with the two cards and he's no Faeria.
Right. And even he's even going to taunt up on this 6/6, so he can't even defend against that now.
Yeah. All
Sorry,
right.
defend by
So
attacking.
this was a very exciting deck. So in this format, the winner keeps the deck he played, and the loser gets to change or has to change.
That's right.
What do you
Once
think? Now KingDanzz know what he's gonna play against. So what do you think is gonna? What do you think his thought process is gonna be when he chooses? Because he has 3 remaining decks. What do you think he's gonna look for? An
I
aggressive one?
I think he does want to be something that's a little bit more aggressive, so he can gain the tempo on this Feed the Forest deck before it really starts going. So I'm not sure what deck he has in his pool that will do that, but he's going to let us know what he's going to be choosing, and we'll be able
Yeah,
to.
because this Red Bargainer deck is already quite aggressive. So I don't know if he's gonna be able to pull out something that's even more aggressive. We'll see.
All right. So we're waiting on that deck selection here. What did you think of that matchup? Like, it obviously was it looked a little bit one-sided after that Tarum came down, but at the beginning it did seem like Hithlum was under a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I mean the double Steamforge enforcers were really scary, but Hithlum, thanks to Divine Wall, obviously managed to hold it off. Actually, without Divine Wall, he wouldn't have the forest required also to play his heals and later on the Tarum. But the Tarum was nothing he planned on. That was just luck.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or at the point, might have had it. I'm not sure if he played the Bloom Sprite before the Vine Wall.
All right. So we did get word of what KingDanz's next deck is going to be, and it's going to be his yellow flying deck. So I'm going to bring that up on stream right here. Let's see. Let's take a look at this. It looks to have some pretty good tools to deal with this deck, actually. Things like Last Nightmare are Feed the Forest deck's worst nightmare, because it's able to take out any creature that Oakling buffs just pretty easily and efficiently.
Yeah, and even if for some reason he's not going to be able to remove it with Last Nightmare, he can just move his opponent's creatures around to evade the taunts. So this is indeed a very strong deck against this mono green, I feel.
That's absolutely true. And one thing that we've talked about on tournament streams before is this Drakkar Sky Captain. It's very good when the game goes long and your opponents don't have very much removal because it will buff every single flying creature you draw while it's in play. So if he is able to
Oh
get a
yeah.
couple of those, then this Feed the Forest deck cannot rush him down fast enough to be able to really put enough pressure on to keep those Sky Captains from getting value. So I think this will be a very important
Yeah,
card in this matchup as well.
yeah, because we also know that Hithlum has no way by playing green. He just cannot deal with them if he plays them defensively.
Yep. So I think this is a very good deck choice by KingDanzz, and let's go ahead and get right back into the match, and we'll see how it goes.
All right. Should we watch Hithlum this time?
We probably should actually, yeah. Good call. Was able to get that in just in time. All right, so if you're just joining in, welcome to the stream. Currently, Hithlum is up 1-0, winning with his mono green Feed the Forest deck against KingDanz's red bargain deck last game.
And that was a. Oh, do you think he's keeping this?
So I don't know if you actually want the Magda Feed the Forest combo in your opening hand, but it does look like Hithlum is going to keep it. Against a deck like this, I'm not sure. KingDanzz is going to have to play a little bit careful with his creatures, but these flying decks generally have so much mobility that he'll be able to play around this sort of thing.
Yeah, but Hithlum doesn't know that it's up against flying deck.
Absolutely, and I think not knowing what you're up against, I think it's a pretty good keep, yeah.
Yeah, just because he's going to be able to put down a Ruin Force in turn 2 if he's being attacked.
Mm-hmm.
So now already he's starting to realize, and because of it, he's building towards his opponent, which I think is absolutely the correct choice.
Absolutely, and he already does. Oh, he has double Sky Captain already, and we can see that this Sky Captain
Oh
already got the buff from the
wow!
first one. This is going to be a
Now
pretty
Hithlum
good
is
start.
sad.
Yeah. I think it's about right now that Hithlum's going to realize that he needs to get a little bit aggressive. He needs to make something happen in this match. He might be looking to play Magda and take out one of these, but unfortunately he's already building towards the smaller creature as opposed to the one that got the buff.
Yeah, what he could do, he cannot do it this turn. Oh wait, he has to explore. So what I could see happening is an explore put down, and then a forest. Put down a ruling shrine and pick up the Faeria with the freedom fighter and attack the Drakkar Sky Captain. It's not gonna die, but his freedom fighter is gonna have full health, and if KingDanzz is not gonna be able to deal with it, he can remove it next turn. But there's so big chance that KingDanzz has the answers. There
Absolutely.
are soul drains, there are choking sands,
Yeah, but I think
so
the
he
Choking
might not want
Sand,
to risk it.
the Choking Sand is easily the better option here because of that. The yellow decks actually have a pretty big problem dealing with Rune and Shrine. It'll be able to get a little bit of value, and he's actually going to drop down the Viduran Force instead and try to chase down this Sky Captain by the look of it.
Yeah, so now we'll see if there is a Last Nightmare in KingDanz's hand. Interestingly enough, KingDanz is not running the Yellow Dragon.
That's right. With the nerfs that just came out on Friday, a lot of people aren't as impressed with Azrai. And I'm guessing he was not thinking so much that it's a bad card, but thinking he'd probably be fielding this yellow deck against decks that Azrai wasn't as good against.
Yeah, I feel like the new. Alright, so he didn't have what's required to deal with the Ruden Force just yet.
No, but that 6/5 will go a long way. He could be holding a Soul Drain just to be able to finish off the 7/7 after it trades into the 6/5, and that wouldn't be too bad for KingDanzz, especially with the Faeria advantage that he's getting.
Yeah. What do you think about putting down another Ruden Force here? Right, like place a forest to the left maybe, go up, pick the Faeria, and drop another force, and then attack.
That sounds like a great play to me. It allows him to just keep pressuring this yellow deck. It does bottleneck a little bit. You won't be able to attack as efficiently as you could if the two flying creatures back up, but I think that's
He
still a
can
good play to
actually
make.
he can deal with it with Magda. He can kill the Sky Captain here.
Oh, we didn't even think about that. So this is a
Oh,
fantastic
I'm
play
so
here.
happy I saw it before it happened.
Yep, good call there, Joke. So he's going to go in and be able to deal
Yes.
with the Sky Captain, and the Emissary is still going to be able to trade off into that, though. So it's not the worst thing in the world for KingDanzz, but he is starting to feel the pressure here.
Yes, and Hithlum is going to be able to put down a very aggressive Vruden force. He could even put down a Runen Shrine now
He could, and
to make.
that's probably what he's considering right now. And that Runen Shrine actually looks like it's gonna have a great matchup against these two creatures because these two creatures can only deal 7 damage. It won't even be enough to kill off the shrine.
Yeah, and he cannot take down Magda with the Soul Drain, so Magda will be free to harvest.
Absolutely. It looks like he's
Because
gonna.
there's no way he wants to put a Choking Sands on the 0-2 Magda, I don't think.
Yep, that's right. And he kind of goes for a halfway point here. He ends up trading into the 2-power creature and then dropping the shrine. That way he kind of ensures that the shrine gets the maximum value out of it.
Yeah, I think that was the correct call.
Yep.
Very well played.
Hithlum definitely showing his expertise here.
Yeah, I was thinking a little bit about the Choking Sands. Maybe KingDanzz realizes that the only real target for Choking Sands here is Oaklings, and Oaklings you generally don't want to kill unless they're buffed. So maybe he actually chooses to use the Choking Sands.
Maybe. And it looks like he's going to play a little bit aggressively here. He's going to try to hold off Hithlum and just go for the face.
So at this point, Hithlum cannot afford to play another aggressive Varuden force. So what do you think he's gonna do instead?
He can still take the Faeria for his turn though, right? So he would be able to drop down a Verduran forest, but he won't be able to, excuse me, to develop a forest if he did that. But I still
Yeah,
think
then
that's a good
he
play.
cannot have. Yeah, he can't get that aggressive Ruden force then.
Yeah, it won't be as
I
aggressive as
mean,
you'd like, but
yeah, we'll see. He doesn't really have many options.
okay. I think the play he can make here is to advance his Verduran force and probably use the Freedom Fighter to take out the 5/3, and then he can open up the land to the bottom left to be able to have Magda go back and forth and start farming. So we do see that land
He
placement
puts
here.
down a forest. Maybe he wants to draw just to see. Oh, that's an unfortunate draw.
Well, I don't think it'll affect everything too much. He seems to be ahead in this race. And actually, yeah, I think the Freedom Fighter was probably a little bit ambitious by me. The 7/5 trades into it just fine and doesn't really change how the Runen Shrine would take damage. And that's going to be all he plays this turn. So
Yeah,
this,
I think he wants to put a lot of pressure on to KingDanzz. That's why he didn't play any Oakling. He wants to get the Vruden force very high up.
yep, I think you're right. But this is actually the turn where if KingDanzz draws the last Nightmare, it actually completely stuns Hithlum's attack. He won't have an aggressive creature in there or anything, and he'll have to start from 0 while taking damage from this Drake.
Well, Hithlum will still be able to put down an aggressive forest to put down another Vruden force.
True. Right by the well up here. But
Yeah,
he'll have no pressure this turn.
not
And no,
anymore.
so it looks like
Not
he's gonna be able to drop that desert. Okay. And he's just going for the straight up race here.
right. So now the Vine Wall will be pretty good.
Yep, the Vine Ball would buy him extra 4 life here.
Actually, putting just down the Oakling is just as good as the Vine Wall, just cost a bit more.
Sure, obviously Choking Sands would be able to get by that a little bit and get in some extra damage. So that's one thing that
That is
Hithlum
true.
needs to be aware of. Yeah, this is a pretty tense race here. It's actually going to end up pretty close as far as how much damage each player is taking. Um, and he wasn't able to deal with this force, so next turn he's likely to take about 14 damage unless he's able to draw some other kind of answer or another Windborn champion.
Yeah, the Windborn champions are really powerful cards.
All right, we see a bit of a
Alright,
deep.
so
Oh wow. So we see a bit of a defensive
he's
play
still
here.
gonna be able to play it.
Yeah, he is. It's still able to
He's,
drop a forest and play down this massive Endurance force that he just got off of the Oakling. So it looks like KingDanzz is gonna have Hithlum is gonna have 2 turns to be able to No, sorry, I was right the first time. KingDanzz gonna have about 2 turns to take out his opponent. Otherwise, he's gonna take way too much damage.
Yeah, he's gonna be able to use the Last Nightmare here, but that's only gonna deal with one. He could sacrifice his Windborn champion into the 7/5, but then he doesn't really have much going for him.
Right, and that would buy him a bit of time. But we haven't seen a Last Nightmare from him yet, so it's possible he doesn't even have it in hand yet.
That is true. But he also didn't really have a good target for it yet. There was just no point in playing it since there has not been enough pressure on his orb.
I'm not sure if it's a spectator bug or something, but we can actually see the buff from Drakkar Sky Captain come out when KingDanzz draws cards. So I actually know that the card he just drew for his second card draw in the turn was a flying creature here.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
And
That's it's not a big deal. It would have been really bad if Hithlum was able to see it though.
yes, it would. Um, so it's going to be interesting to see what that creature is. He needs to play something defensively here, otherwise Hithlum just has lethal with that Freedom Fighter in hand.
Yeah. So he's gonna move that Rune Force once more.
Okay. So that will stave off lethal this turn. He'll be able to attack in for 12 damage, which is absolutely massive, obviously. But it looks like KingDanzz is threatening lethal next turn instead. Hithlum does have this Grove Guardian in hand, though. So this is really
Yeah,
going to be right
but
down to
if
the wire.
yeah, maybe KingDanzz chose not to play his Last Nightmare if he had one because he wants to use it on whatever Hithlum plays now to win the game.
It is possible, just to keep a taunt from stopping his victory. But it is possible that Hithlum will use a Freedom Fighter here instead to trade off into the 6/1. That would play around any kind of
Yeah,
removal like that, and then it would make Hithlum start winning the race.
yeah. He could also collect the one Faeria by doing that play.
Yes, he would be able to by building a double Prairie first.
So that would be the safer choice because KingDanzz has not shown a single Last Nightmare yet. So putting down just a Grove Guardian is very risky, I feel. But it looks like that's what he chooses to do.
It's the play that he makes. And if Hithlum does have this Last Nightmare, even if KingDanzz has the Last Nightmare though, oh no, they would be lethal. That's right. I was looking at it defensively instead. So Last Nightmare is the play for lethal here. KingDanzz, if he doesn't have it, he'll probably try to draw into it because that seems to be what he needs at this point. He doesn't need Faeria, he doesn't need lands. He just needs to be able to draw into this removal. And he has a Golden Aviary instead, which will be lethal. So KingDanzz will take this
Wow.
match. Oh, that Golden Aviary coming through right at the very end there. And he's able to take out this Nailbiter and tie it up at 1-1.
All right, that's good though. I am happy because I'm really excited about seeing one of Hithlum's decks.
Oh yeah, so
Let's see what it chooses to play.
I know that a few people voiced some concerns about the tournament format and wondering if, well, one person has this deck that the other player just can't beat. We'll just see a 4-0 stomp. But luckily, it seems like that's not going to be the case here. We're already tied up at 1-1, and we get to see what Hithlum has to counter this one.
But honestly, I would actually like if someone had such a good deck in this format that he was just able to 4-0 the opponent. That would be so cool.
It would be, but it
I
doesn't seem
think
like
those
that's what
kind
we're
of
going to
things are
see.
exciting. No, certainly not. And I'm hoping. No, well, let's see. Hithlum knows that KingDanzz is going to play his yellow flyers. So what's good against yellow flyers?
Well, it seems that Hithlum is choosing to play his yellow control deck. Let me bring that up on screen here. So we are going to have a yellow versus yellow matchup, but it's not the one you're used to seeing. A lot of times on ladder we see the yellow aggro versus yellow aggro, but in this case, neither player is actually looking to be aggressive. Jokes, what do you think about this
But
list?
we got.
Sorry, do you have any experience with this sort of thing?
I have experience of Yak Tag be crushing me. This is a very, very exciting deck. I think it's the one I was. I mean, I don't want to spoil anything from his other decks, but this is my second favorite of his of the lists he brought today, and I think this one might very well have a chance against KingDanz's flyer deck.
Absolutely, and I think there were only one lit copy of Choking Sands in the flying deck, so these Defender of Homelands might actually be able to get quite a bit of work done. They already have a decent trade for
Yeah,
Choking Sands, but the flying deck doesn't really have a better way to get rid of them. A card you don't normally see in yellow decks like this, and obviously since they try to be a bit more aggressive. But these Defender of the Homeland could be very impactful in this game.
yeah, and he's running two Queen's Favorite, which is also a card that's gaining popularity lately. What do you think about Queen's Favorite?
Queen's favorite, I think he's probably just doing that to help stave off the rush decks a bit. So any yellow rush or something like that, Queen's favorite just trades so favorably into a Roger Monk and really just about any other aggressive creature that they have. So I think that Queen's favorite is probably a concession to that, and it still is a very good early Faeria farmer since you can drop it on turn one.
Yeah,
All right, and now one thing that we do see in here though is Azurai, which is something that was significantly missing from the yellow flying list. What do you think about the Azurai inclusion here?
I think Azra is really good because not only does it become massive in terms of attack, but it can help you do very favorable trades by draining the opponent's attack. So if you play Azurai and then you can probably make much more beneficial trades than without him. It's uh, it's almost like you give all your creatures 2 extra health.
All right.
Yeah, at least the ones that are able to fight the same turn that you play Azurai.
Sure, and I think that Azurai will be pretty helpful against this flying deck as well because it might give him the extra mobility that he needs since it has that charge ability to be able to chase down some of these flying creatures that would otherwise be pretty hard to deal with.
Yeah, and we also see he's running five. He's running 3 Windborn Champions, which
Mhm.
are also very helpful for that.
Yeah, so I think we expect to see creatures flying all over the map in this game. It might start getting a little bit hectic.
Yeah,
Uh,
let's see.
All right, but with that, let's go ahead and get started. It's going to be yellow versus yellow, the control list versus the flying list. So we'll see how this goes, and good luck to both contestants. Once again, if you're just joining in, the matchup is currently 1-1 in just completely tied up. Hithlum has used a mono green Feed the Forest that has been defeated, and KingDanzz has used a mono red bargain list that's also been defeated.
And this is a best of 7, guys, so we have a lot of games left. So we see Hithlum starts with 2 amazing gatherers, the
Mm-hmm.
Kalim's follower and the Defender of Homeland.
Right, I think this is exactly the start that he's looking for, so he can start getting that Faeria lead and really look to control his opponent.
Yeah, do you think he's going to try to contest both sides for the Faeria by playing maybe Explore? Uh, Now playing Explore to the other side on his following turn to drop Desert and collect with Kalim.
Either way, he's
Wow,
only going to
KingDanzz.
collect one this turn, so I don't think it's too important. But this play from KingDanzz is really interesting. I was talking with Inari, who won a recent tournament using a yellow flying deck, and he says he pretty much never builds prairies. It's just always constant deserts. But I think maybe KingDanzz was a little
Yeah,
bit concerned about Hithlum playing a really quick rush deck or something like that, so he decided to drop these prairies defensively in order to help stave that off.
yeah. This is. I'm gonna take a quick look here. What is it that he's even trying to accomplish here? Maybe his hand is just full of Dune Drakes? I don't know.
It is possible. Now, one thing that's important to note is that even though we have these deck lists, the players have not seen each other's decks before, so they're coming into this completely blind. So all this analysis that we can do about how the match is going to go out, could just go right out the window if they don't follow the same line of thinking, or if they think something that we didn't even consider.
Yeah. See, told you. I called it. Double Dune Drake.
Yep, you got me. Double
Wow,
Doomdrake it is.
I'm so good at this game, have you realized?
Yep,
What do you
I've
think about aggressive explore here and then put a vampire next to the 2 drakes?
I think if you
It's
had a
gonna
Soul
give him
Pact, it would be a lot, or sorry, a Soul Drain, it would be a lot more likely that we'd see that play. But as it is, that Vampire doesn't actually kill those Drakes off. Um, So I don't know if it's a good play or not, but does look like his play is going to make. Now this is kind of weak if KingDanzz is able to play a Soul Pact or something and have a Last Nightmare, which Hithlum, for all he knows, he could have. But I don't think we do have any Soul Pacts in KingDanzz's list.
No, I can confirm that there are no Soul Pacts in KingDanz's list. But yeah, I think Hithlum just had to establish something on the board. He can't not do anything.
I agree with you here. Now one thing to
And
be
since the
one thing a lot of our players might not know is that these drakes cannot gather Faeria. So even though we see that one drake next to the well there, it won't be able to do anything about it.
Yeah, now it's just really threatening the defender of homeland if he's gonna go and collect. But I don't think Hitler minds killing a Doomdrake for the cost of his defender of homeland.
Right, it does seem like a
Now
pretty good
this
trade there.
this Skyguard, is that something you wanna remove now with the last nightmare maybe?
I don't think the Skyguard is really worth the last nightmare at this point, no. Since it doesn't have charge or anything like that, it's not threatening the Defender of Homeland, it's not threatening that good trade, so I really don't think it does too much. But it is possible that Hithlum
But
wants
we
to get
know
it
that,
off the board so that he can stop the Faeria production of KingDanzz.
yeah, because if he doesn't deal with the Skyguard now, um, he will likely also not deal with it next turn. He doesn't have anything on the board that will be able to threaten it really. Uh, and if it just stays there, it's gonna gather a lot of Faeria. He chooses to remove it.
Yep.
I think that's a good good choice since KingDanzz he wasn't zero Faeria and he has nothing to collect with. This way Hithlum has way better economy, and he has 3 creatures out.
Yep, I think Hithlum does have a pretty early game control of this deck, or sorry, of this game. So we do see that trade come in with the Drake there. Unfortunately for KingDanzz, Hithlum actually has this second Color's Follower in his hand, which we'll be able to start collecting that Faeria well as soon as next turn.
Yeah. Maybe he will start putting down some prairies now. If it puts a prairie towards the left, the follower will be able to double collect right as it comes in, or he just starts collecting with the yak. This is, I think the yak attack is a pretty good draw here.
Yep, Yak Attack is a
And he
very
chooses to
powerful
draw.
card. He will be able to trade in really well with this Drake if he can find a way to get a Yak next to it, and I think that might be the sort of thing he's looking for.
Yeah. And establish collecting here on the maybe upper right Farias.
Absolutely. So he's just looking to take as much board control as he can here. Now he's trying to hide this Calian's Follower a little bit and block off that desert, but it looks like this Dune Drake is just going to come right in and take out that follower. And he does have the last nightmare to deal with this vampire as well, so KingDanzz is starting to wrest board control from Hithlum here.
Yeah, but little does he know that the Yaks are back in town.
Yep, no one ever expects the Yaks. I think we are pretty likely to see that come down here.
Yeah, he doesn't really have much else to play here unless he wants to put down a dragon just to deal with whatever is coming out later. But I don't think that's gonna be happening here.
Yeah, I think he's going to
The
save
yak
the
attack is
sorry, I think he's going to save
so
the Azurai for if he starts to lose a little bit more board control. That way he can train the power off of multiple creatures as opposed to just this one Drake.
yes, absolutely. I think the yak attack is the obvious play here. But where and how do you think he will do it?
I think
Maybe
he's probably going to drop one directly under the Drake, obviously, so that he'll be able to gather the Faeria there. And then the other two probably go right in the center and start pushing up the center of the board and blocking off those deserts. That is what we see here.
I'm a little surprised that they did not place any land yet. Oh, but he wants to put it really forward, maybe? That's why he did it like that?
Yep, I think so. That way he'll be able to start establishing aggressive lands, and when he does drop the Azurai, he'll be able to get it very close to KingDanzz's orb. One other card that we need to consider a bit in Hithlum's list is that he actually has 2 copies of Desert Twister. Desert Twister is able to teleport a creature any creature on the board to any desert you have on the board. So it's very important to kind of spread out your deserts and give yourself a lot of options with that Desert Twister.
Yes, that is very true. So KingDanzz can't do much here. He's falling behind quickly now in the economy game.
Absolutely, this is exactly the sort of game that Hithlum was looking to play. Just take the Faeria wells next to him and kind of just control the rest of his opponent's board as much as he can. And here we see a last nightmare draw, which is going to be able to deal with anything that KingDanzz throws down. So I think Hithlum is in a very good
Yeah,
position to win this game.
absolutely. And he already has the choking sands for any Kalim Skyguard or Kalim Sky Prodigy.
Yep, those Sky Captains are going to be pretty important as well to get off the board as soon as possible.
Oh yeah, I meant the Sky Captain, not the Sky Guard.
Oh, okay. All right, and here we see a 5/5 come down, but Hithlum already has this last nightmare to deal with it, and I think that is pretty likely to be what we're going to see here.
Yeah, I think so.
Right, so what if you were Hithlum here? How fast would you try to push this? Do you think you're likely to just drop an 8/6 Azra at this point just to try to end the game, or are you too worried about last nightmare to be able to make a play like that?
No, I would not be in a hurry to end this game. I would be probably happy by uh, just dragging it out a little bit longer to feel like I get some more like safety. Not that I can swing it too quickly, but he chooses to do differently. Oh, but that
Okay,
makes it in range of choking sands. That's interesting.
that's an interesting interaction I hadn't thought of. That makes Choking Sands extremely powerful with Azrai, since you can just shrink your opponent's creatures into the Choking Sands range.
Yeah, maybe Hithlum decided to do this not only because of that, but also because he doesn't really have too many threats in his deck. He has the Windborn champions, but he didn't draw them.
Mm-hmm.
And then he has Azrai and the vampires, and that's about it.
Right, so that's something that can actually be pretty dangerous if this yellow control deck comes up against another control deck, because they could just actually run him out of threats, so he doesn't have a good way to kill his opponent. Alright, and here we see the Windborn champion come down and kind of move Azrai away. That'll keep Azrai from trading into the Windborn champion effectively, but we can see that Hithlum does have this last nightmare, and it is indeed going to come down.
Yeah, now KingDanzz sitting on 4 Faeria. And wherever he would play something now, Hithlum is going to be in range to deal with it. Unless he also moves his opponent's creature.
Yep, that's right, and I think KingDanzz is
So,
just really feeling this Faeria Starve here. He doesn't have too much to work with, really, for just about anything. So he's going to try to drop this Sky Captain here, but I think it's not going to be fast enough to be able to have too much of an effect in this game.
yeah. Do you think Hithlum is going to remove it? He can use Wind Soldier Soul Drain to remove it. Or do you think he's going to put down a Sky Prodigy to be aggressive?
Well, I might be cheating a little
No,
bit because he is already making his play, but I think he's going to remove it. He just wants to stop any Faeria production because I think that's the easiest way for KingDanzz to come back into this game is to just start getting a little bit of Faeria and start being able to play things. So
yeah.
Hithlum wants to shut that off as much as he can.
I certainly think this was the correct play here. Leaving KingDanzz with absolutely no Faeria. The yellow flyer deck is not the cheapest deck.
Yes, indeed. Um, it really tries to take advantage of that flying ability to get mobility and get the control of the Faeria wells even without building lands towards them. But unfortunately, that wasn't possible this game.
Yeah, we see here Hithlum tried to draw into lethal by maybe finding a second Wind Soldier, but he didn't get it.
It looks like he's going to have to be a little bit patient, and this might backfire a little bit. But I think it's pretty unlikely. If KingDanzz had a way to remove the Azrai, then he would be able to start using this Windborn Emissary to get something done. But it just really doesn't seem like it's going to be enough.
Yeah, the Windborn Emissary is gonna die now. No, it's not, but pretty much.
And KingDanzz has a
Oh,
prayer, a hope and a prayer. He's probably been holding on to these for a very long time to see if he can
yeah,
get anything done with them. But it does look like
and
that
that's
is going to
game.
be it. So Hithlum takes the
Wow.
match with his yellow control list, and this goes up 2-1 in Hithlum's favor. Uh, Wow, so great game there. We just see the power of this yellow deck pushing forwards and really just taking control of the game. Um,
Yeah, so KingDanzz, he only has 2 decks left to choose from. So I'm very curious to see what he thinks is going to be best against his yellow controlled style.
Yep, and I'm just waiting on word here. And okay, he is going to play a deck that a lot of us know and love, or know and hate, depending on how much you play against it or how much you play it. He's going to be on his blue-green fairies list. So let me bring that up here. Alright, so blue-green fairies looks to take some early tempo and play things like Flower Silk Fairy and Gem Silk Fairy, which become very powerful for what they cost when you draw an event while they're in play.
Yeah, and there are a lot of targets in here for the vampires to just destroy, but if you can get the procs on his fairies before the vampire gets up close and cozy, this might be very exciting. He's running 3 Darkstalkers. What do you think about Darkstalker?
So Darkstalker is an interesting one. It really kind of pushes this towards a more aggressive list, since you're able to get them down very early, either for an offensive attack with the 3/2 body, or to play something like Explore or Spell Whirl early on to be able to use it to take Faeria control. So I'm a fan of Darkstalkers, but I'm not sure if I'd run 3 of them in the list. But obviously, KingDanzz is a much better player than I am, since he's playing in this tournament and I'm not. So he definitely has something up his sleeve with him.
Yeah, I'm guessing Darkstalker is maybe pretty good tool because I mean when he put this list together, he probably had a few decks in mind that he wanted it to be able to handle, and just getting some really cheap bodies onto the board can be really useful against aggressive decks.
Absolutely. So one other thing that we see in this deck that I really was surprised to see is this Arose right at the bottom. Arose is a 6/6 dragon, and a lot of people are saying that's the worst dragon right now. What do you think about that inclusion in this deck?
I saw Orisa yesterday in the tournament I was casting, and it did not prove to be very awesome. But I mean, any player who plays Orisa automatically wins the fans, uh, and that's also important. You want people to share for you. It's a very fun card, really fun card, and maybe he actually took the time to think about. But I don't know because he has a lot of fairies, and fairies are generally a pretty bad target for Orsai because you don't want them to transform.
That's true, and
Um,
even the Darkstalker, if you reduce its cost before playing it, it's only a 1-cost card, so you'll be getting a different 3-drop instead.
yeah, and I mean the Tiki Caretaker and Aurora Mythmaker are obviously good to transform, but that's only 2 cards out of his 30.
Mhm.
So yeah,
So it's possible that he's just looking to use it as a big 6/6 flying threat to close out the game, not worrying about the transform ability too much.
yeah, the Lore Thieves are also pretty good targets for the Orosai
True.
because they're usually just 1/1s. And he's running 3 spell worlds, so you never know what's gonna happen, right? Uh,
Absolutely. Could get 2 more Roses.
oh yeah.
All right, so without,
So
sorry, anything else?
no,
All
no.
right. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into this game. We'll be able to see how this fairies list does up against the yellow control list of Hithlum.
This is so exciting. And now we're always gonna sit there and think, are the Yaks coming? Are the Yaks coming?
Yep, Yak Attack could definitely be a big problem for this blue deck. If he's able to get some land control, he'll be able to take out all the 1/1s that this blue-green deck is playing, just with the
Hmm.
one card. All right, and here we go. Let's see what the opening hand looks like for KingDanzz. What are you looking for in this blue-green deck, do you think, in your starting hand?
Certainly the fairies, and that looks pretty good to me.
All right, well, he
I
definitely
don't.
did find some fairies here. He gets his choice of which one he wants to play.
Yeah, and I think it would be much happier if they were both the same color, so you could play them both on turn 2. But
Mhm. Oh, wow. So he's actually
oh,
going to
he
mulligan this hand.
chooses to redraw. All right.
So he does still have one fairy here, and now he has a buff as well. but that still doesn't quite put the Fairy out of Choking Sands range, unless it gets the buff first.
Yeah, maybe he wanted to find the lore thieves also to start with some more options
Okay, that
by
is a
drawing extra cards.
if that is a very powerful option. One thing that this deck can do is play a Fairy and then immediately play a Lore Thief. And since you're drawing two cards, it's pretty likely that one of those is an event to be able to make use of this Fairy's ability.
Yeah. So what do you think here? Is KingDanzz gonna put his fairies aggressively, or is he gonna try to keep them alive by putting them towards the left here?
I think he has to hold off a little bit on this Fairy. If he tries to go all in on this Fairy, it could just get Soul Drained, or if he tries to put the Embrace on it, it could get Choking Sands. And that would just be absolutely devastating to his early game here. So I think we're pretty likely to not see it come down, but it turns out that I'm wrong. Um,
This is a pretty decent target even for a vampire.
Yep, he does have the option of playing the Desert into the Vampire here, which would create a
But here comes the
huge
Yaks.
7/5 threat.
Here comes the Yaks.
You think the Yaks are coming down?
I don't know. It would be very hard for him to deal with.
Yep, that would be able to take control of two Faeria Wells and take out this Fairy all in one turn. So it would be an extremely powerful play if he does have the Yak attack here.
Yeah, because he's gonna also. I think there's gonna be a vampire. No?
Nope, just a Columnist Follower, but it could still be a Vampire. It is going to be one.
Right.
So this is a massive threat, and this is really not what KingDanzz wanted to see. He wanted to hope his opponent didn't have any really big things so he could get these fairies going and really start pushing their advantage. But it looks like Hithlum's going to take the early advantage in this game.
Yeah, this is now looking really rough.
Absolutely. This yellow control list is very powerful and apparently very good at dealing with fairies.
The one thing that's really good about especially the Gemsilk Fairy is if you can put it out and then Aurora it before it triggers, so it's going to be a 8/6 with protection. That's
Yep, that's a very powerful interaction. And even if you have to wait until it does get the trigger, you still have a 6/6 protection. You're able to use that 6/6 body to trade into just about anything.
yeah, that is very true.
Alright, he's going to try to drop
Is
the
he going to
fairy
use
here.
Shifting Tide here?
Alright, doesn't look like he needs to, but he might choose to anyway. But no, he's just going to hold on to the Shifting Tide, probably to see if he can get better use out of the land movement, or if he draws a fairy later, he'll have the immediate draw that he might need to make good use of it. Now, we do see a Rose in
Yeah.
hand here. Do you think we'll be seeing this Rose this game?
A lot of it depends now on what Hithlum puts down now, because if he removes this fairy with, say, a Shocking Sand, KingDanzz is super far behind by Hithlum having three fairy wells over him. Faeria wells, not fairy wells. And then he might need to put it down just to have a 6/6, but that also seems terrible.
Alright, he does have the Choking Sands here, and this is looking real bad for KingDanzz now. He just has absolutely nothing on the board here.
Yeah, I think he's gonna kill this Kalim's follower with a Ninja Toad. No, he chooses to draw. I think this might be just a concede.
It is possible, but he could use the Ninja Toad here and a Ruinous Command to trade off for this Vampire to get it out of his face and buy himself a little bit more time to draw into what he needs. Alternatively, he could make that play
Yeah.
with the Ninja Toad to trade for the Colony's Follower and kind of take control of that Faeria well a little bit.
Yeah, he didn't play a lake now, so because he chose to draw a card, so he's not able to do that this turn.
I see. Yep.
But he could do it next turn. But Hithlum sits very pretty there with this 8 Faeria.
Do you think this Arose might offer a way back into the game here? Oh, that's right. He drew with the Shifting Tide. So he could have played the Ninja Toad if he wanted to, but it looks like he's going to hold off and see. So we might actually be looking for Ninja Toad plus Arose. He's 2 turns off that play if he wants to make it, though, unfortunately. He might just not have enough time.
Oh, and stepping on this lake was important.
That Aurora is a
So
pretty
Ninja
big draw, though.
Toad and Mythmaker is pretty awesome as well.
That'll be able to clear off the Vampire if he wants to, or he'll be able to take the good trade on the 0/1 and possibly make the Vampire trade into it. That is a little bit more risky if Hithlum has a Last Nightmare or something like that, though.
Yeah. Do you think he's gonna use Elderwood Embrace as well to have his Toad survive?
I think that's definitely a good play. You really need the pressure on the board right now.
Yeah, he can't just afford to just leave a 1/1 Aurora Mythmaker.
Yep.
And it takes the.
Okay, so he won't be using this Aurora here.
He
Maybe.
wants to get it on his Fairy
Okay.
because with the taunt, if it managed to get taunt, that's very useful.
Okay, and I think that's a good play from
But
KingDanzz here. That way he has an undamaged 6/6 that Hithlum will have to deal with. We will see if he has the Last
yeah,
Nightmare or something, though, to be able to do that.
yeah. Otherwise, this is going to become a 7/10 with taunt and charge, which is a very big threat. So I think if Hithlum is able to deal with it this turn, he will.
Yep, and Hithlum is pretty deep in thought here, so I don't know if he's thinking whether or not he wants to draw a card to be able to try to deal with this fairy, or if he has one in hand and is trying to think if this 6/6 is worth it right now. I'd imagine that if he does have the Last Nightmare, he would play it, though. But he doesn't know what's in this deck, and he doesn't know if there's going to be a better target later
Yeah. Seems like he did choose to use it after all.
on. After thinking it through, he
Uh,
probably realized that, it's this blue-green fairies list. It doesn't really have any big threats usually, so he doesn't have to worry about any Verduran forces or anything like that.
yeah. Wind Soldier to take out the Mythmaker.
Okay. And that's really just going to be denying Faeria production from his opponent.
Yeah, but not only, because in this, when you're up against blue-green, you're always scared of buffs coming out. You're afraid of. Oh wow, that was a nice play.
It's a little
You're
bit of.
afraid of buffs. You're afraid of Unbound Evolution on the Aurora or Mirror Phantasm. There's a lot of scary things a blue-green player can do with just a 1/1.
Alright, and it looks like Hithlum will take this once again. So this actually brings the matchup to 3-1 in Hithlum's favor.
All right, so we only got one deck left for KingDanzz.
Yes, indeed. And it's going to be a green-yellow sacrifice list. So the idea behind this deck is to use a lot of creatures with last words and that sort of thing, and use sacrifice effects, but from both green and yellow, to make use of those last words and really get a lot of advantage out of them. It's a very interesting list, and we saw it a lot in the tournament yesterday. Joke, what do you think about this list?
I did not get to see a lot of it actually yesterday because I was away for most of the day, but so I never saw it in the like in action. I've only heard about it. But the big question is it gonna stand tall against Hithlum's yellow control? And this is going to be the deck that he has to defeat all of Hithlum's remaining decks with.
Absolutely, and I think it is a very powerful deck. It definitely has the ability to do it, but it is very draw dependent, I feel. You need to be able to get the right combinations of cards at the right times. If you just get all the creatures you want to sacrifice in one hand, then it's not going to be able to do it. Or if you get all the creatures that sacrifice, then obviously they don't want to sacrifice each other, and that won't be good either.
Yeah, and it's only running one last nightmare, but it also has the Magda.
Hmm. Now, interestingly enough, we don't see Feed the Forest in this list. What do you think about not
Yeah,
including that?
I just saw it myself, and that is a bit odd.
Mhm. It's possible that he just doesn't have too many big bodies, so he wouldn't be able to get that much Faeria off of the Feed the Forest anyway. So he's deciding to kind of hold off on that.
Yeah, but if it's just using Magda to kind of temporarily steal an opponent's creature, maybe it's more safe and cheaper even to just play a second last nightmare.
Well, because of all the extra sacrifice outlets in there, he doesn't necessarily need to not steal a creature or not sacrifice the creature right away. It's just the Feed the Forest is usually the
Right.
quickest way to do it for this deck. But he still has the Demon Wranglers,
Yeah.
he still has the Death Walkers, he still has ways to get rid of them.
Yeah, of course, of course. I didn't drink enough Coca-Cola today, so I'm still not. My brain is not on full speed yet.
We can't hold that against you. But with that said, it looks like Hithlum is 3-1, and we're ready to get into this game. And this is match point for Hithlum. So if Hithlum wins this, he will be declared the winner of the first Faeria Showdown. Good luck to both players, and let's get into it.
So, we're gonna watch KingDanzz since he's playing the new deck.
Yes, indeed.
I think we watched KingDanzz just now also, but
We did, but I
think it's
always
probably
like
gonna
to
be
see
more
the new
exciting.
deck here. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll see if he'll
So
be able
what do
to
you
pull it
want
out
to have
here.
in your opening hand? Bone Collector must definitely be a very nice thing to see.
Yep, this isn't a bad hand. He has the Bone Collector for early Faeria production. He'll have the Magda Deathwalker to be able to deal with a large threat if it comes down. I think this is probably a hand you keep, but I don't actually have too much experience with this deck either to know for sure.
To me, it looks like a good hand to keep. What I'm curious about is, does Hithlum have any deal to deal with Runin the Relentless?
Ooh, now that you mention it, I don't think he does. I think his only way to deal with it is to kind of out-tempo it and really just push his opponent and hope that he isn't able to recover from it. We see that Hithlum's deck is pretty well set up to take Faeria production early on, both with those King's Favorites, Khalim's Followers, and Defender of the Homeland. But it doesn't look like we're going to see one right away, at least not those neutral creatures. He might have a Khalim's Follower in hand, though.
Yeah, and he chose to not play his Explorer just yet. So,
Interesting here, we
I
do see
think
the Bloom Sprite come down. He didn't collect Faeria this turn, but I'm guessing that's just because he wants to develop a desert next turn. And if he chose to make the forest on the right side and develop so he could develop the Bloom Sprite, well, no, hold on.
he might put double prayers next turn to just start getting ahead of economy here.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Um, he's in no rush to play as Deathwalker because there's just nothing that he needs it for right now.
You said you haven't
But
had your Coca-Cola, I haven't had my coffee.
life is tough sometimes. I'm looking at Hithlum's list again, and indeed, it doesn't seem like there are any ways for him to deal with Runin. He could move it around a little bit with the Windborn champions, and maybe if he manages to establish a Kalim Sky Prodigy to just produce a lot of Kalim's followers, he could just use them to block, I guess. But that is assuming the Runin is not already in his face.
Right. Looks like he was able to draw into a Defender of Homeland this turn, so he is going to look to farm this Faeria well 2 turns from now. So that means that KingDanzz is going to be getting a little bit of a Faeria lead here. We'll see if he's able to keep pushing that and really just overvalue Hithlum here.
I really like. Oh, let's see. Oh, he's gonna take 2 Faeria and remove the Bone Collector.
That's
That's a nice play.
absolutely great use of Wind Soldier there. And we see that this Magda is what got the buff off of the Spirit of Rebirth. We didn't talk too much about this card. It's a pretty interesting card.
Yeah, it's very, very good for Hithlum to remove it.
Yep.
Oh, he's removing everything.
Wow, so
Wow.
absolutely everything is off the board now, and he's able to get a Living Willow. If he was running Feed the Forest, he'd be pretty happy to see that sort of thing. It's pretty good in that deck, but just with this one, it looks like it's going to be relegated to Faeria farming.
So Hithlum spent a lot of cards, but on the other hand, he dealt with 3 of the creatures. But now again, KingDanzz is setting up to double collect here.
Yep. Both players looking a little bit low on cards, but KingDanzz, like you said, is maintaining this Faeria advantage, unless Hithlum is able to drop some removal spells right now. And if Hithlum tries to drop an aggressive vampire or something like that, like we have been seeing in the past games, there's going to be this Magda Deathwalker combo next turn, assuming that KingDanzz doesn't play anything else, and I think we're pretty likely to not see him play anything else here.
Yeah, I think so too. This is, but Hithlum knows already what kind of deck he's up against. All the cards that has been put down screams sacrifice. So
Absolutely.
he is certainly aware of Magda being a potential threat here.
It is possible from the first game that he played against this yellow control list that it was just kind of a little bit stranger version of the yellow aggro list. But after that last game, I think he is pretty sure that it's just straight up control.
Yeah.
Alright, so Hithlum's on a 10 Faeria turn. This looks like it could be an extremely appetizing turn for Azurai. But once again, KingDanzz does have a good answer to that if that's what comes down.
Depends also on where it goes down. No, not really.
Yeah, the only place
Yeah,
that
he could.
he wouldn't be able to reach it is if Hithlum builds a land right next to his orb, pretty much. So I think that
Yeah,
just about anywhere he's going to be able to deal with it, if that is what he's about to play.
yeah, you're right.
It is possible he'd kill off one of these 1/1s first too, so that he get full value off of the Azurai drain on one of the creatures anyway. But this is going to be a Kalium's follower here. Um, Followed by a Shaitan Vampire. So there is the Vampire, and we are almost certainly going to be seeing this Magda Deathwalker here.
Yeah, I would definitely expect it to come down, but this is going to be a very far back position for the Deathwalker.
He
It's not
would
going
be,
to be able to establish too much. Oh, but here's a very interesting draw, and we know that there is no way to defend against the Runin, but does KingDanzz realize?
yep, I think we are probably going to see a little bit of pressure being put on here. He's able to develop a forward desert near the Faeria well on Hithlum's side, and he'd be able to drop the Deathwalker up there after playing Magda. I think that's pretty likely to be what we're seeing, and that continues his production, and he's able to get in a deep forest pretty soon for Runin as well, so he's able to start pressuring with that. This is really starting to look like it's in KingDanz's favor.
Yeah, this is looking very good right now. And I keep forgetting. I, for some reason, thought Deathwalker would be put wherever the creature is sacrificed, but you're right. It's put at a desert of your choice. So this is now. I mean, Hithlum has no Faeria. He's being able to gather from two, fortunately. Um, Even Magda being a 1/3 instead of a 0/2 in this situation actually matters a lot. Because he's going to be able to deal with the Kalim's follower.
Yes, he is. So that buff from the spirit really coming in used here. We'll see if Hithlum has anything good for this, though. He has a bunch of threats to deal with on the board now, though. So it looks like he's in a really tight spot.
Hmm. This runing just scares me. I know how. I mean, I love to play control matchups or control decks, but as soon as they drop a runin, it feels so bad.
Oh, and he's actually going to spend the choking sands here to make sure that this 0/1 is going to stay alive, at least for another turn. What do you think of using the choking sands on a Magda like that?
It probably shows KingDanzz that Hithlum is a little bit desperate.
Okay, that makes sense to me. And it looks like he's going to start setting up these aggressive lands and drop this Bone Collector so that he's able to contest the Kalium's follower.
Yeah, I I mean, in this deck there are so many targets for choking sands.
Absolutely, you're
Because
kind
it's
of
also pretty good to remove the small minions before KingDanzz is able to sacrifice them to gain some additional bonus from it.
and this is a concept we kind of see in some other card games too. The idea of the deck like this is to overload your opponent's removal. That means just present them with way too many targets that they really, really want to remove, that they just don't have enough removal to deal with everything. Because Hithlum definitely isn't looking to engage in too much creature combat. We see this 0/1, these 2/4s, not really the strongest things as far as combat goes. So if KingDanzz is able to present enough big threats, which Runin is certainly going to help with, then he definitely has a big advantage in this game.
Yeah. The question is though, if Hithlum pulls down a yellow dragon after Runen has been put down, it's gonna have a very big yellow dragon, and at the moment KingDanzz has no way to deal with it. And all his creatures are gonna be on 0 attack basically, all the defensive ones at least.
Yep, that's true. Now this Deathwalker did get buffed recently, and it does have Death Touch now. So if the Azurai is within range of that Deathwalker, he will be able to take it out still. It'll be
Yeah,
interesting
I
to
think
see that.
if there's dragon coming down, I would expect it to be right in KingDanz's face.
Most likely. But this turn it looks like we're going to see Runin come down. Now Runin, as you might know, is the card that this format was named after, so we kind of have it near and dear to our hearts right now, and I'm glad we'll be able to see it in at least the rest of the matches that KingDanzz plays.
Yeah.
And here it comes, ladies and gentlemen, our namesake, Runin the Relentless.
Woohoo!
Hitting the board, and this seems to be a very good time for it, as you've been talking about. It's going to be very hard for Hithlum to deal with this sort of recurring threat.
Yeah, I think there's not a lot Hithlum can do at this point to come back. A very aggressive dragon that gets a lot of attack could be it, but
But before he does that, he's still going to have to be able to find the removal for it. Or no, sorry, not the removal of the Faeria for it. And at the moment, he's just taking so much damage so quickly.
he's gonna take 6 damage next turn, at least, unless he's dealing with these cards.
And if
somehow.
KingDanzz is able to draw into a Choking Sands, not next turn, but the turn after, he'll be able to apply even more pressure.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that is worth noting is that KingDanzz is giving up a little bit of Faeria production for this. But I think he's just deciding that it's worth it, and next turn he will be able to drop the Living Willow into a position to collect Faeria after he trades off with the 3/5 into the taunt creature.
Yeah, unless he feels that he needs to draw cards or something like that.
That's true. Yeah, it all
but
depends on what
Hithlum
Hithlum plays
doesn't
here.
seem to have a he doesn't seem to have an obvious answer to the situation because he's not doing it yet, at least.
Even if he does have an Azurai, he'll be taking 6 damage this turn for sure. Okay, so Shade and Vampire coming down here. But he's going to be taking 6 damage this turn, and even if he has Azurai the following turn, which obviously he won't be able to play at this point, he'd be taking at least 4 more, putting him within death range from either one of these creatures on the board. Either one of the big creatures. But
yeah, I think what he wants to do now is just step back with Runin, attack with his Deathwalker, because if he puts the Runin out of range from the Vampire, doesn't matter if he somehow kills the Deathwalker, he can still attack with Runin.
that is possible, but he could also be looking to trade off Runin so that he's able to start using its ability to keep coming back. So it looks like he might be trying to get the Runin into combat as soon as possible instead. And that is what he's going to be doing. So an interesting play there. Not exactly what we were expecting, but I think he's just thinking that if he's limiting the creatures that Hithlum has on board, it kind of lessens his chances of coming back.
Yeah. What do you think about this attack here? Alright, he comes in with the Elderwood to finish it off.
Okay, that's a very efficient trade there. And it, once again, it just shuts off as much Faeria production as it can. Now if he wants to take out this Runin on the board just to play around things that KingDanzz could have in the future, then he's still
can
going
put
to...
the follower now on the right side. No, he could have put the follower here on the right by place. No, it already created lands. Never mind.
Yep, so instead he's going to be playing it aggressively and get down another big threat in this 5/2 from the Demon Wrangler.
Of course. I've never used these cards, so
Yeah,
I call the wrong place all the time.
No, this is definitely a very hard deck to play. There's a lot of interactions that you need to be aware of, and I've never played it before either. I'm usually the mono green sacrifice deck, but it's definitely interesting to see all the powerful plays that this deck can make. And it seems like that might be why KingDanzz kept it in the anchor position, in the last position, just to make it so it can. It seems like it can beat just about any deck right now if it gets the right draw.
Yeah, this is. It would be so cool if he did a comeback now and ended up clearing all of Hithlum's remaining decks.
Absolutely. Now, once again, the current match score is 3-1 in Hithlum's favor. So if Hithlum is able to win this, then he will be advancing on to the winning, to being declared the winner. But it does seem like it's going to be a pretty difficult thing to do at this point, and he's actually just going to help it along a little bit and allow KingDanzz to kill him here.
All right.
KingDanzz doing
so what what do you think Hithlum will pick up now?
So Hithlum's in an interesting spot here. He knows that he doesn't really need to worry
He only
about...
has to beat his one deck.
Exactly. So if I were him, I would probably go with the deck that I think has the worst matchup. That way you can play that deck and get a better feel for what your opponent's playing before you go in with the deck that you think is going to win the matchup. Um, so we'll see what he
Yeah.
does end up choosing. Um,
I have
okay.
so much hope he's gonna go for his red deck. That looks so much fun.
I had a feeling that was the deck you were talking about when you were talking about it being your favorite deck here. Is that right? Have
Definitely.
we've been saving that one for this long? Well, I've got good news for
Uh,
you. He is going to be playing this red control list here. So, Joke, since you're so excited
all right.
about this one, why don't you talk about the deck a little bit?
All right. So he's running 3 Falcon Dives and 3 Famine. That's gonna clear out so many small minions. But on top of that, he's running 3 Plague Bearers, which um, when they die, they deal 2 damage to every creature. So he has already, from these 3 cards, he has so much AoE. Well, Falcon Dive is not really AoE, but he has so much very cheap removal. And on top of that, he's running 3 Cypher's Wrath, and then just Ground Shakers, Firestorms, red. There's just so much destruction in this deck. I love when things just die. Uh, I,
Well, I don't know if we're gonna have
I
you on
very
if
much
you're
enjoy
just
to
gonna be
see
talking
that.
about death all the time. But no, I think the reason that this deck is actually here is because he was expecting KingDanzz to bring that blue green fairies list. I think this deck is a direct counter to that one since it runs so many 1/1s in that list. But right now, I think that it will have a decent matchup against this deck as well, since it's just trying to flood the board with a lot of powerful threats. Since he has this much AoE clear, he's going to be able to deal with a lot of those.
Yeah, and he's running Firebringer as well, which on combat deals 2 damage to all opponent creatures. There's
Mm-hmm.
just so many things in this deck that makes the opponent really frustrated and annoyed. And that, of course, is what we all aim for when we make our decks, right?
Frustrate and annoy your opponents. That's what I always played in Magic, and that's what I play now too.
Yeah, me too.
All right, so I'm really excited to see this deck though. This is probably the most unique deck that I've seen in these lists. So I'm really excited to see how it plays out. And we're just gonna go
Yeah,
ahead and jump
I'm.
right into it. So,
Yeah, Eminer has been helping me a lot when it comes to playtesting my decks, and he runs 3 Plague Bearers in the decks I always play against, and they are really tough to deal with. And he can even trigger it himself by Falcon diving them if he needs to. It's just so awkward to deal with it because if you want to kill it with a creature, it's going to deal 4 damage to that creature, not just 2.
all right. So here we see the starting hand. What do you think of this starting hand? Obviously, Hithlum chose to keep it. What do you think his plan is going to be with this?
Uh, well, here he just wants to run up with a Plague Bear and start collecting Faeria, I would assume.
All right, and it looks like he's actually going to
Or
build
not.
aggressively though. It might be that he doesn't
Yeah,
want to give his opponent any time to, really build up those threats and everything. So he has this bomb slinger, he has this blazing salamander, and he might just be looking to get in his opponent's face and get value out of those.
yeah, that seems now when you say it, and when I see him playing the lands like this, that makes so much more sense.
Yeah. I suppose it's a little bit of cheating every time that the player makes the play first, and then we can just get to explain it. Our job's easy compared to theirs.
Yeah, so here we get the Firebringer, which I think is a very awesome card, and probably most beginners. I talked about this yesterday also. When the beginners look at this card, they think this is the most imbalanced card ever, and yet we don't see it so being played almost ever.
Yeah. Now the big
So
thing
I'm
about it
happy
is
that we see it here.
its stats are kind of weak for what you're paying for it. It's 6 Faeria and 3 mountains for only a 4/4. But its effect is very powerful and effectively makes it at least a 6/4 when you're fighting against creatures.
Yeah, and
Right. So here we see the Plague Bearer come down. And I don't think we'll see KingDanzz really develop too much into this board until he can take care of that Plague Bearer. I think it's going to be
yeah,
Hithlum's job to kind of.
that's so annoying when you play against Plague Bearer. You're like, okay, I don't want to play this. I don't want to play this. So you sit back, and then the opponent, when you finally deal with the Plague Bearer and play something else, it's like, firestorms and ground shakers and meteors and everything flying at you.
Absolutely. I think here we're probably going to see a kind of a setup for Blazing Salamander. He's probably going to start playing some aggressive mountains here and really look to get a pretty good Blazing Salamander turn. But he is going to develop the Oakling here. What do you think about that? Do you think he's just trying to sacrifice this Oakling and doesn't care if it takes damage?
It's definitely looking like that. Hithlum is doing a very good job denying any aggressive land. Because even if KingDanzz manages to get out his big creatures that are very cheap by just sacrificing stuff, he won't really be able to put it anywhere near Hithlum's base. And Hithlum knows already that there is no deserts yet, but here comes the first one.
All right, so that puts the threat of Soul Drain and Choking Sands and all that stuff on the table now. Here we could actually see a Plague Bearer trade into an Oakling and then drop a Ground Shaker.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
important to note though is that the Bone Collector is gonna. No, it's not gonna proc since the Oakling is not dying.
Right, it would just barely be able to kill the Bone Collector in time before it starts getting those buffs.
Yeah, I think we're gonna see a ground shaking coming down. But that was a interesting placement.
Yep,
It was to start collecting some Faeria and also protect his orb.
Yep. Now, one thing
From
that is
aggressive
interesting
lands.
is against red decks like this, the buff from Oakling is actually going to be extremely powerful. He doesn't have anything like Last Nightmare or any hard removal to be able to deal with those buffs. So this big creature coming down is going to take probably a couple cards to be able to deal with.
Yes, and that is something Red struggles with a lot. It's very expensive for them to deal with massive creatures. I would, I wish there was some protection here for the Firebringer so it could attack without taking damage.
That's a neat little combo there. Is that can be your next ladder deck?
I've tried it already, it didn't work.
That's unfortunate. Okay, so we are going to see a Tiki and Kalim's follower come down to effectively trade into this Ground Shaker. We can see Hithlum's hand. He has this Bomb Slinger, which will be able to deal with this pretty well, but forward damage is usually kind of hard for red to deal.
Yeah, but this is very important to deal with this follower now, I think. But at this current location, it doesn't pose any threat whatsoever because it cannot collect Faeria. It cannot um, attack his orb. So he doesn't have to deal with it now.
Yep, that's
But
true.
it was also good for KingDanzz that the Oakland triggered on the follower because that's probably one of the best targets for it since it has haste and it's so cheap.
Absolutely. So here we have a lot of decisions on this turn, though, to figure out exactly what else he wants to play. He might be considering playing a Blazing Salamander or something to stop the Tiki Caretaker from farming next turn. What do you think about that sort of play?
I think he's considering what's more important to protect. I mean, if he doesn't kill the Kalim's follower, KingDanzz is going to get aggressive lands established, and that is something it looks like Hithlum has worked hard to prevent. So I don't think he's going to stop that now. I think he's going to try to kill the follower just to prevent the land production.
Okay. And it is entirely possible he just runs out the Firestorm and Falcon Dive here, but instead he does choose to play this Bomb Slinger, just decide it's way too good of a time to do that. And doesn't even use the Falcon Dive on the Tiki Caretaker, though.
KingDanzz has so much Faeria already. Maybe if he was starved, it would have been worth to use the Falcon Dive. But it's an interesting decision to let it stay alive.
Yes, indeed. Now, let's see. So he isn't even looking to develop anything else. He's not trying to get these Firebringers down on the table or anything like that. He's just playing this as slow as possible and just letting his cards kind of grind out his opponent. Since he has so many AoEs clears, he's fine with KingDanzz just developing creatures and throwing them at him because he has so many
Yeah,
efficient ways to deal with that many creatures.
yeah.
So I think at this point, even though KingDanzz has so much Faeria, I think Hithlum is actually in a really good spot here. What do you think? Who do you think is
Yeah,
ahead in this
definitely.
game?
Yes, I think so. It's gonna be very difficult for KingDanzz to put on the aggression because he just has to walk really far, and Hithlum has a lot of answers in his hand.
Yep, that's true. And we are going to see the first sacrifice effect here. A Demon Wrangler is going to sacrifice a Elderwood Hermit, and he's going to really start getting a lot of power. And this is really the power of this green-yellow deck. It is able to have these huge swing turns like this where it gets a lot of power down on the table for really not too much Faeria.
So now we could see. I mean, this is starting to get dangerous for Hithlum. He doesn't want his opponent to collect 3 Faeria every turn while he's not collecting any. Then he's gonna fall behind. So he's gonna deal with this.
Yeah, I think we're likely to see the
Is
Firestorm
it
here.
gonna be, yeah, either a Firestorm or putting down a Firebringer maybe and just Falcon Dive the Demon Wrangler?
Alright, so you're right, and he doesn't even Falcon Dive the Demon Wrangler. He doesn't value denying his opponent Faeria that much right now. He's just looking to grind him out, and this Firebringer might be the thing to do it.
Yeah, the Firebringer can deal with everything on this board right now if the Oakling doesn't step back. But we might also see Last Nightmare coming down here.
Yep,
Because
Last
this
Nightmare.
Firebringer is a huge threat right now for KingDanzz.
Absolutely. If the Oakling fights it, it doesn't even die though. That's the huge thing, is it'll be able to do the same thing again when he fights another creature.
Yeah, there's not going to be any other creatures left.
Alright, so he is going to step back and just farm as much Faeria as he possibly can here by the look of it. He might be a little bit hesitant to develop into this 4/4 once again. But a Bloom Sprite seems like an okay thing to develop. Just basically replaces itself when it dies and gives KingDanzz more options depending on what he gets off that Bloom Sprite.
Now this is great. You just put a Plague Bearer in your opponent's face, or you put the Plague Bearer down and Falcon Dive it.
Yep, that's a pretty good draw here. It'll destroy everything except that Oakling, and then this Firebringer will be able to continue trying to chase that thing down. You do lose the
But he's
Bomb
also going to
Slinger,
lose his own Bomb Slinger, yeah.
yeah, but that might be worth it. But no, it turns out that Hithlum decides to play this Firestorm instead, which will still clear everything except the Oakling and keep his Bomb Slinger
Yeah,
alive.
that is a far better play, I think.
And now we
It's
see a
important that he
situation.
has now he can collect on the right side. Why at the same time he threatens his opponent with a Firebringer.
This is a situation we don't run into too often in Faeria. Normally it's, one player taking control of all the wells, snowballing and building up tons of Faeria. But right now it seems like the player that's behind just has a ton of Faeria, but he's so afraid to play all the cards in his hand because of all these huge board clears that Hithlum has. So he has to be really careful with what he's doing with them. And it looks like he is choosing to develop a bit more here. So he plays this Spirit River Birth and buffs it with a Tiki Caretaker to make it a 6/6. This will contest the Bomb Slinger pretty nicely here, but Hithlum is still able to deal with it, possibly by using this Blazing Salamander in hand. But he might also be waiting for a better target for that Blazing Salamander.
I think he might just trade now the Bomb Slinger into the Spirit and put down a Plague Bearer in its place.
Okay. I was thinking he might hold off on that just because he doesn't want this Firebringer to die to a Soul Drain easily. He wants it to take a little bit more
Yeah,
resources out of KingDanzz to be able to deal with that.
this is
This is a very
this is by
strange
far
game.
the most entertaining game, except for that Tarun play maybe. But I very much enjoy these type of games. I know a lot of people think they're boring and bad for the game, but I think this is so exciting.
And if you missed that Tarum play, Tarum was ended up coming out in a mono green Feed the Forest list. You'll be able to check out the VOD. It'll be on my Twitch channel after this, and I believe Jokes will be posting it on your YouTube channel.
Yes, I will do that as soon as you, uh, as soon as I can.
Okay.
We'll see when that is.
Sounds good to me.
Sometime today.
All right. So here we just see some little bit of development. This Elderwood Hermit could be a little bit awkward if there was another Firestorm, but as it is, if Hithlum only has a 2 damage clear, it'll be able to still get off its buff. But we can see from hand that Plague Bearer and Double Falcon Dive will actually deal with the entire board if Hithlum wants to do it. But he actually seems content to just kind of sit back and relax in this situation.
Yeah, Firestorm here would be beautiful. He's running 3 of them. Yellow Dragon would be even better. I mean Red Dragon, obviously.
Yep, and that is in the list as well. So this is absolutely crazy how this match is going, because once again, KingDanzz is sitting on 23 Faeria. If he had an Aurora's Dream, he'd be just one away from playing it. But it doesn't seem to be the case. Not quite running blue.
Okay, so we can take out all 3 cards here on the right with a Flame Burst.
Yeah, and that seems like it's going to be a great play, just to get a lot of pressure off the board here and prevent a little
Or
bit of the
actually,
Faeria farming.
I think maybe just taking the Firebringer and attack the Spirit now. It's
Okay,
maybe even better.
if you're going to do that, I think you want to use the Falcon Dive on the Oakling first, just to prevent the Elderwood Hermit buff from actually going on anything.
Yes, I was thinking that you would definitely Falcon Dive the opening, but it's very important that he does it before he attacks. That's very correct.
That's right. And this might be the second game in a row that we see pretty much all of the land spots filled up. But it looks like he's just going to play the Blazing Salamander and just going to deal with the one creature and hold on to all of these big AoE spells.
Yeah. So at this point, KingDanzz has enough Faeria to last him very many turns here. So, but what is he really gonna do here? He can sacrifice creatures to make other creatures, but they're simply just gonna die.
Right, Hithlum has done such a great job building up all of these lands and everything that KingDanzz just really doesn't have a way in. Is the biggest problem. He can't summon aggressive creatures. He can't really get anywhere near Hithlum's Orb without having to run into a Firebringer or some other kind of AoE. What this effectively does is it kind of slows down the game, so it's kind of a lag. KingDanzz plays some creatures and then starts advancing them, and Hithlum has about 3 turns to be able to deal with them before they're even really threatening.
Here we got another Bomb Slinger.
I think we're pretty likely to just see Hithlum pass here. Just worrying about gaining Faeria.
Yeah.
We noticed that both players are kind of hesitant in drawing cards. I think KingDanzz has drawn a couple just because he's really looking to dig for some kind of answer to all this. But Hithlum's just sitting back and waiting for Fatigue to hit, really.
Yeah, I love it. This is so good. And now KingDanzz is starting to step forward, and he's gonna regret it.
Yep, and he is going to develop another creature too.
Oh, that was an important creature. I think we need to Flame Burst this one before you kill the rest.
That is pretty possible because something in KingDanz's hand could get extremely big, or multiple creatures could get out of an easy AoE range. At the same time, Hithlum just has so many resources right now. Are you even really worried about that sort of thing?
I mean, if say 2020 comes down, that's very bad for him because the Oakling can trigger as well. I
Wow.
think this was a misplay here.
That seems pretty
Could
likely.
maybe.
Now this Spirit of Rebirth is a 5/3, and it's going to be really hard for Hithlum to deal with. It's just going to keep getting
And
value and keep
it's
buffing creatures.
yeah, that's one of the most important creatures right now to deal with. Oh, but he's gonna Bomb Sling it and Falcon Dive it.
Okay, so that's a pretty good answer
So
at least.
oh, even better with the Ground Shaker.
All right.
Uh,
Now this will
yeah, but
get off the
still,
Oakling buff here, so we'll see if he has any big creatures that just got popped into his hand from that Oakling. Um,
yeah, because what we have left in Hithlum's hand, I mean, he has a lot of damage, but it's not going to be enough to deal with a very big creature.
yep,
If the
he's got
Oakling got a good hit there.
yep, he's got 3 from the Salamander, 2 from the Falcon Dives, and 3 from the Flame Burst. So that's about 8 damage there, and he could play the Famine as well. Now the nice thing though is he does have this Ground Shaker that's very offensive now, and KingDanzz is going to have to spend a little bit of time at least to deal with that.
Yeah, he has to do it right now, I think, because just taking 5 extra damage is super bad once we go into fatigue.
Absolutely. I think at this point Hithlum is probably just planning on using Fatigue. I think that Ground Shaker is probably going to hit some kind of removal. And that is going to be the case. It looks like Magna is going to be able to deal with that, as well as summoning a Deathwalker here. Hithlum does have an answer to this on board already, but I'm guessing he's going to want to keep around this Bomb Slinger. Oh, he doesn't need the Bomb
And
Slinger,
he
just the
plays his Bloom Sprite.
yeah, just the Firebringer trading into the Deathwalker is enough to trade off this entire board. So we're really seeing the power of Firebringer in this situation.
Yeah. And another Spirit of Rebirth. Please Falcon dive this before you attack into the Deathwalker.
Yeah. Hopefully he's not too excited to make this trade that he does it without thinking, but I think Hithlum will be able to think it through, and he does play the Falcon dive first.
Yeah. But now we see he doesn't have.
Oh, but the Spirit does still get all those buffs off. I was not aware of that
Oh, it
interaction.
does?
It does by the look of it.
Okay. I didn't know if it would die at the same time. I thought it wouldn't trigger. Alright, so seems like Hithlum didn't know either.
Mm-hmm. So KingDanzz did just get a pretty big amount of value off that. We'll be able to see if he'll be able to use that or not to be able to turn this around.
Yeah, and he draws a card. He only has 8 left in his deck. So here comes a follower.
All right, and 4/5 follower. Now that's not an Ogling buff. That's normally how we see creatures that big, but that's just from the sheer number of Spirit of Rebirth triggers that he's gotten in the past few turns.
Yeah, and that was the last Firebringer for Hithlum. So
Yes, it
he's
was.
running out of AoE here. KingDanzz is going to be able to clear this entire board and start playing threats. And
And
depending on how big those threats are, it might be difficult for Hithlum to deal with it.
yeah, at this
What
point,
Hithlum would like to draw is maybe a red dragon to start. So this is 8
wow.
health.
Okay, so this Bone Collector is what got the buff, and Hithlum just really doesn't have the Faeria to be able to play all of his answers right here. And we could actually be seeing the turning point right now.
Yeah, especially with this becoming a 8-12. 8-12 is really much. It's very hard
Yep,
for
so
a mono red to deal with.
it seems like KingDanzz at this point is just saying, okay, you can't always have all of these AoE spells. I'm just going to drop a few more threats and really start pushing. And even a Firestorm won't be anywhere near enough to clear this, and he's going to need some Faeria to be able to do much more than that.
Yeah, I think what he needs to do is put down a Plague Bearer so he can at least kill the Deathwalker and Demon Wing in one hit. But there's still the big Bone Collector that there's just no answer for right now. He
Right.
chooses to play it on the left side here.
I think that's a good play here. He wants to get as much damage onto this Bone Collector as possible. So by playing out on the left side, he's pretty much ensuring that he'll be able to attack into it and just get an extra 2 damage on it. But I think he's still
Yeah,
going to be
so it's
relying
gonna
on
be
his
4 damage.
sweeps. Yep.
Yeah, and then Firestorm is still gonna be enough to clear the Deathwalker or the Red Dragon.
Yes, it will. So this is going to come right down to the wire here by the look of it. KingDanzz is in a position where he's starting to run really low on cards. So if he wants to play creatures that will get to his opponent's face in time, he's going to need to play them pretty soon.
Alright, so this is gonna be 4 damage. It's gonna put the Bone Collector on 8, and then if it drops another Bone Collector, he can get it down to 4. And that's in range to clear off with its remaining cards. So I think he just picks up the Faeria with the Plague Bearer, attacks the Bone Collector, and then puts down another Plague Bearer.
All right. Yeah, that sounds like a pretty good play to me here. Obviously, the Bone Collector does get that slight buff, but overall, it's still taking about 3 damage.
Alright, it grows as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a very complex turn for Hithlum, and he doesn't have as much Faeria to deal with to play with as KingDanzz does. KingDanzz is pretty much looking at the cards in hand as a resource, whereas Hithlum needs to consider the cards in hand and the Faeria that he has.
Yeah.
All right, and he will make this attack. Probably drop another Plague Bearer. Oh no, no Plague Bearer here. What do you think about that? Would you have dropped the Plague Bearer?
I would have. I'm looking at his list, and to me, it doesn't really look. I mean, he's still gonna be drawing 2 devouring plants, which is not gonna do anything really except delay. Delay is good because we're close to fatigue, but Oh, and here comes Ronin.
Yep, here comes Runin, but Runin is so far away that this really isn't what he's looking to do. And he's actually just using it as a sacrifice outlet for the 6-5.
Yeah, he's putting out all the stops here.
Yep, now let's see what Hithlum's answer is to this, but this could be extremely close here. Um, it's just really a question if he's able to deal with this 10-10 and the Runin coming down. Wow, this is coming right down to the wire. If he's able to stave off this rush right now, I think he'll probably be able to hold off Runin. So I think the biggest priority that he has is going to be to deal with this 10-10. I think because of that, we're pretty likely to see Blazing Salamander come down right now.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the play.
Would you play the Devouring Plant just to hold off the 10-10 in case it is able to come in? Well, I guess we just saw that. That is what he's going to be doing.
I think that was a good play. If he can draw into... Let's see, he's not going to be able to afford the Red Dragon in the coming turn.
Right. I think KingDanzz still has one Choking Sands in his list. Is that right? I don't think we've seen it yet.
I'll take a look quickly.
Yep, if he does have that Choking Sands, it's almost certainly going to come down here. It's a great answer to that 3-6 and keeps a little bit more damage off of the Bone Collector, making it that much more difficult to deal with.
He does have a Choking Sand in his deck, yeah.
Okay, so it's really just a question
Let's
of if
see.
it's in the bottom 3 cards or not. If he has it, it's almost certainly coming down.
I don't think Hithlum is going to be able to come back from here. If there's a Choking Sand now, then there's just...
Right, but if there isn't a Choking Sands, then he has the Flame Burst, Cypher's Wrath, and the attack to be able to deal with this 10-7.
Yeah.
Let's see, with double Falcon Dive, Famine, Flame Burst, Cypher's Wrath, that's 2, 5, 6, 7, 8 damage. Wow, so once again buffing up this
Oh,
Bone Collector to an 11-8, and it looks like he doesn't have the Choking Sands.
all right.
He also chose not to attack here. Is that right?
No, he killed
Oh,
the
that's right.
Devouring Plant.
Okay, my mistake.
But, so let's see. If he attacks with the Blazing Salamander, the Bone Collector is gonna go to 6 health, so it's getting buffed.
Well, you will want to probably play your burn spells first. I think that's probably the way to go.
Yeah.
Alternatively, you could attack in and play double Famine here, I think. That'll deal with the 5-2. Do you still have enough damage to deal with the Bone Collector if you do that?
Let's see. He will need 3, 4, 5.
So you can play one Famine. Oh, okay, so he's going to use the Plague Bearer Famine combo here by the look of it. That means that this Bone Collector will get one buff here, though. But he will be able to barely deal with it right in the nick of time.
Wow. And before the Deathwalker is gonna be able to attack him, he can cipher it.
Right.
And now he has more plants, which is gonna be very important actually.
Right, and at this point
But
it's
if he
pretty
can,
much Runin versus Fatigue by the look of it. The Cypher's Wrath is going to deal with the 6-2 on the following turn, probably.
yeah, the Runin can also, he can kill the Runin.
He can kill the Runin, so he can use the Famine and Falcon Dive to take out the 6-2, and then the Cypher's Wrath will
And
kill the
then,
Runin.
yeah.
Ooh, and that
Wow,
Ground
this
Shaker is
is a
big.
very...
So actually, Famine, Falcon Dive, Cypher's Wrath seems like an amazing play here. It uses his Faeria extremely efficiently, and it really doesn't leave KingDanzz with much.
Yeah, I think that is gonna be very... And then by the time Runin is walking down, he can establish a ground shaker in his opponent's face. Maybe, if he wants to.
Maybe.
But I would expect Famine Falcon Dive Cypher Wrath combo coming out now.
Seems pretty likely to me. Now it will take about 6 turns for uh, Fatigue alone to kill KingDanzz. That's assuming the Ground Shaker doesn't come down and that the Cypher's Wrath does get the damage, though. So it does look like Cypher's Wrath will... Oh no, Cypher's Wrath is actually going to be held onto for one more turn.
Yeah, it has no reason to play it yet, so I think that's a very good call.
Absolutely. Let's see if he can draw into some kind of bigger removal spell that he wants to use, some kind of AoE. If he draws into another Plague Bearer, he has the Plague Bearer Falcon Dive to be able to deal with it immediately.
Did he only play 2 Plague Bearers so far?
Oh, I think you're right. It might have been 3 by now.
He has 9 cards left. One of them is a dragon. There is also Firestorm. Oh, look at that.
That Firestorm seems like a pretty good card here. Rune is going to be able to come down. He's going to be Relentless, but it looks like it might not be enough to win the Relentless format. This Ground Shaker is going to be able to trade into it one more time, and that should be enough time for Hithlum to just win out through Fatigue.
Yeah, and we have 1 Devouring Plant left, which is pretty important. I think he has another Cypher's Wrath. I'm not sure about that. And maybe a 3rd Ground Shaker. He has 3 Ground Shakers, but he only played 1 so far. Or did he play more than 1?
I honestly don't recall, unfortunately.
This has been a long game.
Yes, it has. And lots of cards have been played, and a few cards haven't. We've had more cards played than haven't, though.
Yeah, this is a very exciting match, and I'm so happy Hithlum finds the cards to answer. I just love it. So entertaining.
Well, I know if I'm playing against Joke on the ladder anytime soon, I know what deck he's going to be playing.
KingDanzz is frustrated right now.
Yeah, and I can't really blame him here. It's a very frustrating deck to play against.
And Hithlum knew that this would be a strong possibility, so he played very, very defensive in the beginning, putting up all these lands. If it wasn't for this amazing land placement from Hithlum, KingDanzz would probably take the game. If he could put this rune in far more forward, it would be way harder for Hithlum.
Yeah, really any aggressive placement would have been a huge help to KingDanzz here. But having to wait 4 turns to be able to attack with a creature, it seems like it's just going to be too much at this point. Now he's actually going to Last Nightmare his own Oakling. So this is certainly a desperation play here. He's just trying to get as big of a creature down as he possibly can. And that's going to be this Bone Collector here. So what do you think about that play, and do you think this Bone Collector is going to be a big enough threat that it might be able to go the distance?
KingDanzz has too much health. It's I don't know. The Ground Shaker is going to be able to clear out this rune in one more time, but it's going to be able to just come down for free. And then there's a 9/11 that's 1, 2, 3. In 3 turns, it's going to be able to hit. And at that point, it's going to have 10 damage. So 2 hits to win. But fatigue is a thing, and we have Devouring Plants. I think Hithlum got this. I don't know if he's if he has another Last Nightmare. Do you know how many he played?
I believe it was just the one in the list, but KingDanzz is actually completely out of cards now. So what he has on the board is what it is. If Hithlum is able to deal with this, then it will be completely over. KingDanzz will have absolutely nothing left, except for a rune.
Right. And yeah, that was the only Last Nightmare in his list. And of course, he doesn't have any cards left to draw, so of course he can't use Last Nightmare.
So I think it'll be really easy for us to predict KingDanz's plays from here on out, at least. But Hithlum's will be a little bit more complicated. So I think we spectated the right side, at least for this game.
I would have liked to see the Ground Shaker go down there, actually.
Just hold off Runin for one more turn? I think I can see that. I think I agree with that play. Because this Ground Shaker would be able to get in the 6/6's way, and the Bone Collector, the Bone Collector would be able to get around it, though. So he'd have to play it a bit more defensively if he wanted to make that play. Interesting. But that effectively does make Bone Collector into a 10/10, though. So I'm wondering if he's trying to figure out if he can win without dropping any creatures whatsoever. That would probably be the safest thing, since that means Bone Collector would have to hit 3 times in order to be able to kill.
He has enough Faeria to kill this Runin right now, right? If he
Yes, he
drops,
does. Yes, with a
he
Ground
drops
Shaker,
the
Flame
Ground
Burst, Cypher
Shaker.
Trath.
I think that's a good play. And if you put the Ground Shaker forward, then KingDanzz is forced to move back and attack it, and then it's going to be a very long walk to get back. Yeah, this looks like what it's going to do. It's going to put the... Yeah, this is what I would have done as well.
Alright, so this puts on a 2-turn clock for KingDanzz. Sorry, a 1-turn clock. That means he has to deal with this Ground Shaker immediately. You're right.
Yeah, and if it doesn't, and if it does, there's no way he can win, especially with the Devouring Plant. I mean, this game's over now, unless for some reason
Yep, unless
something
unless Hithlum starts
crazy
attacking himself
happens.
somehow. But yeah, it seems like next turn we'll be able to take out the fatigue, and I don't think Hithlum can kill himself in time. So unless he concedes, yep, that'll do it. Hithlum
All
is the
right.
winner of the first Faeria Showdown. Congratulations to Hithlum here. That was a very amazing match with a great deck here.
Yeah, that was a very entertaining last game.
Absolutely. Now I think that Hithlum was willing to do a interview if he won this. So we'll see if we can get him in
That
here,
is correct.
and we'll be able to have that interview with him very shortly here.
I'm writing to him right now.
Okay. All right, that was an amazing matchup. And once again, you see on your screen here, this is the red list that ended up winning here. I have no idea what the good matchups are for the bad matchups, but it seems to deal with green-yellow control, assuming you don't mind a long game once in a while.
This was hardly considered a long game. I've played way longer games, but he won through fatigue, so I guess that's
That's about as long as
as
it
long
gets
as it
usually.
gets.
Yep, 1 through fatigue against a deck without very much card draw. Um, so give me just a moment while I'm getting Hithlum in here. Sorry guys,
That was
once
fun.
again, just a moment please. I'm going to black on my screen real quick so you don't accidentally see my Skype information or something like that. But don't go away, we are still right here, and we'll be able to get back to you very shortly. All right, Hithlum, are you there?
Oh,
Uh,
All right,
hey
Hithlum.
Hithlum.
Well, first of all, congratulations on your win here. It was a very impressive win, even with a couple pretty long matches there.
um, yeah, like red control kind of always does it. I'm not sure if the game was fun or not.
Well, it's certainly fun for
It
us
was
at
the
least.
best. It was the best game of the day, at least for me. I love seeing things just explode and everything dying, and winning through fatigue is the most satisfying thing.
Okay, it's like it's kind of a fun deck because it disregards the fairy advantage. Like I basically don't care how much fairy my opponent has, just as long as I have enough to AoE everything down.
Yeah. When you were invited to this show match, did you already know, like from the get-go, that you wanted to have one red control deck, or how did you come up with your decks?
Um, well, the So the first deck that I played, the green one, it was basically kind of I don't know, a checker deck. I just pretty much made it just to queue it in first and see what KingDanzz was playing and like kind of get the feel. But yeah, it obviously went quite well though because he was playing Red Rush and playing green with lots of towns was basically good, and also the tower feed was kind of fun.
Yep.
It was really funny.
That was an absolutely fantastic draw of blooms right there. I think that's probably the first time we've ever seen that in a competitive game, and it honestly wouldn't surprise me if it was close to the last either.
Right. Yeah. So the yellow control is basically my favorite deck. This is what I was playing before the patch. It got hit quite hard with the Azurai nerf and the Last Nightmare nerf, but I think it's still okay. I mean, I did beat the yellow flyers and fairies with it, which are both two of like meta decks kind of. So I think it still might be good.
Yeah, that fairies deck can be a very dangerous one, as I'm sure all of us know. It's pretty common on the ladder nowadays. Is that why you chose to bring the red controlled list that you did? It seems like it is a pretty good matchup against that fairy list as well.
Yeah, exactly. It was basically my counter. I was really afraid of KingDanzz just playing fairies and going for 0 versus me, so I just brought a deck that would trash fairies.
All right, that seems like a pretty good choice. Um, so what other
I
kind of
want to ask you a little
preparations?
bit.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
What other kind of preparations did you make with this new of a format? Did you have a testing partner or anything like that? Like, what sort of things did you have to do differently that you wouldn't have necessarily had to do for a different tournament?
Um, well, I probably wouldn't have made that many decks. Also, I guess with that new tournament they just announced, you still need to make 3 decks, so
Hmm.
that's kind of out of the window. Um, it's I think you try to basically uh, make decks that are counters to some specific decks rather than just make a deck that is good, or at least you should have like a couple counters and a couple good decks. That was basically what I had.
Okay.
Like the red deck was a counter for fairies, green was a checker deck, and then I had 2 more or less solid decks.
Okay, so just really trying to predict what your opponent's going to play and then play those counter decks as best you can.
Yeah, probably it's best for this format.
Okay.
And you did very well, so you were probably right about that. In this last game, when you were playing your red control, we pointed out how genius your land placement were. You were working really hard to defend against your opponent from building aggressive lands. And did you know already from the start that if I cannot establish this, I'm gonna be in trouble? Or when did you realize or decide to start defending very heavily against your opponent's land?
I played this deck a few times before, and basically what I noticed was if my opponent can get those lands, that means that from the point where he plays his creature until the point where I need to remove it, I usually have like 2 or 3 turns, which basically gives me a lot of time, and I can just OE multiple creatures rather than just the one.
Right, we were talking about
Yeah.
that a little bit in the game as well. It seemed like it might have saved you at the very end there, since that Bone Collector, that massive threat, wasn't able to get in until you were able to have just enough Faeria to deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. But
It was
the
a
kind of
very intense game.
yeah, the problem with this deck is if your opponent knows what you're playing and he just like rushes your land build, I think he has a very good chance.
Okay, so you think that your worst matchups are probably things like yellow aggro and probably the red bargain list even, right?
Um, well, I think to be honest, green actually, just green. But if your opponent knows what you're playing,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
I
So
also got kind of
if
lucky. I
sorry,
also
go
got
on.
kind of lucky when KingDanzz didn't get Rune in early, because if he got Rune in early, that would have been a huge problem for him.
Yeah, it seems like a massive threat to be able to deal with over and over and over again.
Exactly. And if KingDanzz had another deck left, he would certainly not allow you to build up this defensive land structure that you had in this game, since he would know that you were trying to establish a very defensive position. So
Yeah,
I think
but
it was
that's okay because I wasn't really expecting to win more than one game with this deck. It was basically just a one-trick pony process.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so it seems like you saved a good time when you only needed to be able to defeat that one deck to be able to be declared the winner.
Yep, pretty much. And I still had fairies to fall back on if
Yeah.
this one didn't work.
That's actually one thing we were talking about a little bit, that deck selection going into that last deck that KingDanzz was playing. I had the idea that it might be better to actually play the deck that you think is a worse matchup. That way you can gather more information about his deck and what he's playing and be better prepared when you come in with your good matchup. Did that come into your mind at all?
Yes, when I'm playing this mono control, I'm basically pretty much guaranteed to see most of my opponent's deck. So for the next matchup, I would know that.
Okay. Yeah, so definitely a great deck to gather information. Okay.
Yep.
Jokes, do you have any other questions for Hithlum here?
No, not really.
Okay.
But before we let him go, I want him to be here when we say thank you, Crow, for making this possible and putting in your own money as a prize pool. That's very, very generous of you. And I don't know if you've mentioned it yet, but guys, please send some donations to Crow.
Yep. So
and he'll.
Yeah, I haven't set that up yet, but one thing that I guess is a good time for any is to do an announcement for this. I'm going to be setting up a donation set on my channel, and I'm hoping to basically run community-funded tournaments from that donations. A minimum of 50% of any donation that you give, and 60% of anything more than $20 will go directly to prize pools, giveaways, and that sort of thing for these kinds of tournaments, so we can keep doing them and hopefully grow it into whatever the community wants it to be, as big or as small of a tournament each time. That way, with what Joke was saying earlier, the community will have a say. They'll be able to vote on the different formats they want, the different players they want to see, so that we can really keep doing this and making this a consistent thing.
Sounds cool.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for inviting me, and thanks KingDanzz for playing versus me.
Any other shoutouts you want to give while you're on here, Hithlum?
No, not for this tournament. I don't think so.
All right, sounds good. Well, once again, thank you for joining us.
It was all me.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us, and all of our viewers, thank you very much as well. It's been a blast, and I'm really looking forward to doing this in the future. So Jokes, thank you, and as we mentioned, the VODs will be up on the Twitch channel. Jokes will have VODs and highlights on his YouTube, and I'm really looking forward to doing this again in the future. Thank you very much for joining me, Jokes, and for frankly coming to me with the idea in the first place.
Well, thank you for everything. I mean, without you, this would have been not nearly as fun, not nearly as rewarding for the players, and it would have been way more stressful for me. So I'm glad that you're here to take on all the heavy loads.
All right, guys. Well, once again, thank you very much for watching, and that's going to be about where we're going to call it today. So I'm looking forward to seeing you all in the future, and have a good one.
Good night, everyone.